Dutch stroganoff.
They don't need to make any plans or there.
Oh, good one.
And anything,
That's the new guy on the land use board.
minor changes.
Yes,
Howard?
he's the new, nice guy, very nice guy.
Sorry, I know, I have a lot of room. This is all my
Oh,
affordable
yeah.
housing stuff.
Good.
That's fine.
Oh, boy. Oh, you're sending it off anyway, though.
Yeah.
Ah, shit, Jesus Christ.
I mean, he's.
Guess whose water just went over?
Here.
My water broke.
Whoa, whoa.
Oh, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Little plant paper.
We need more.
Need a few more than that. How easier to unroll this thing up.
Terrific.
Get more.
Yeah.
The long hair was not serving me well.
That's what I can. No.
Wait till you see it curl.
Try not to get you wet.
Oh, I don't care. I got wet coming in this place.
Yeah, she will. I wonder if more to the drink.
Sorry.
Underneath this, but
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then her voice is
Thank you,
higher than
Paul.
hers. It does.
Just when I had everything organized.
It happens.
We're testing out the. Boy, you're not getting earth water everywhere. Well, the problem is, it's like.
I didn't even see the cup of water there.
100%
Because
runoff.
Lila was kind enough to bring me a bottle. I didn't even look over there.
I mean, the groundwater's as high.
Still wet on it.
I mean, you look at farm fields and they're big puddles.
Kingsbury's not here.
Yeah. Oh, no, he didn't get here, did he?
You probably did.
Oh, yeah, wait a couple minutes.
Yeah.
He's okay.
Was he here before?
No. That's okay, we're not in the Kingsbury's. I think you're good.
Yeah.
Minutes and resolutions.
Your minutes and resolutions.
I'm not in trouble.
Let's,
Maybe put them up.
here. Here, let's put it. Towel.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. We can't get started with that pen.
Pardon?
We can't get started with that pen.
Yeah.
We don't have, that I was looking for this package. I was looking for renditions of, you know,
Mrs. Costco.
buildings.
Yes, sir.
Anybody online?
Yes,
Okay.
there's 5
5?
individuals right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's preliminary.
No, it's preliminary and final. It's preliminary and final.
Yeah, then there should be site plans, right?
Yeah.
We gotta get Bob a bag.
Just see anything in there. Buildings, colors or anything.
Yeah.
This traffic study was a joke. No, it was this big one.
Flooded?
I can believe it.
Yeah, Tom Boulevard's closed. I just got a Nixle.
Yeah, there's no,
Oh, this stuff all comes later in the meeting.
this one goes, oh, I know, this goes.
It's all towards the end. Pardon? What's that?
Do you know why the road was closed?
Yeah.
Did you,
And correspondence.
Yeah,
what,
I couldn't get
Also-
down there.
was it an accident?
I don't know. Either a flood or an accident. You live in Medford? Give
We
me
okay?
a ride home tonight, because my car is disabled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Call to order, please. Will everyone please rise for the flag salute? Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a reading of the Sunshine Law?
Notice of this meeting was published according to the Open Public Meetings Act.
Okay, our normal announcement, there will be no new business started after 10:30. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Torti.
Here.
Mr. McKay.
Here.
Mrs. Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
Mr. Tricocci.
Here.
Mrs. Baggio.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Ms. Cosco.
Here.
Mr. Bradley, absent. Mr. Novarita, absent. Mr. McLaughlin, absent. Mr. Holden. Here. And Mr. Prolfiker.
Here. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first item for new business today is case 24-5, John DiPietro Polo. Did I pronounce that right? DiPietro Polo. Okay, and Mr. Fusco will be speaking for.
Sir, I
Yeah.
swear you in. Could you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm the testimony you give tonight will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
How may we help you?
So the purpose of the variance is to put an addition on the property. It's a 33 by 10 addition. The homeowner has multiple roof leaks due to having flat roofs, and we're looking to put an A basically over the entire property.
Okay, and it's in the front of the property, right?
Right, correct.
Okay. And what did you say the measurements of the addition are?
33 by 10.
Okay, and it's within the width of the house?
Correct.
As it is right now, so it's not going to present any problems with
No.
side clearance and everything. Anybody on the board have any questions on this application?
No, it's pretty clear from
Yeah.
the papers what's going on.
Okay, professionals, any comments?
Yes, sir.
Just to let you know, the reason that it's here is that the left side of the house, and I've given you folks the pictures, is that they are only 4.3 feet from the left side yard setback where 15 is required. So it is probably one of the most simplest bulk variances that we've had in quite a while.
Yeah, it's pre-existing too,
Correct. This is Long Creek Road there. A lot of those homes are older.
right? Okay. Any comments from the public on this application?
I have a question. What is the purpose of the addition? Is it inside the house or outside? the
So it's a setback on the garage. So this would bring it so that the whole face of the house is all basically one. all
Right,
the way
but the
across.
room that you're adding, is it for living area or garage or what?
Partial, so there's a connecting area in between the house and the garage. It would bump that out so that it's all straight across from the garage. So there would be some living area added. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no comments from the public, I'll close public comments and ask the board, what's your wish?
Move to grant the variance requested.
I'll second it. Any questions on the motion from the board? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Prolfiker?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Tricocci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Cosco?
Yes.
Okay, it's approved, motion is approved. Is there anything else you would like to ask us?
Yes, I'm asking to proceed with a waiver without risk due to the roof leaks that are active currently.
Okay,
You better get over there.
Yeah, right?
especially tonight,
Yeah.
this week. Do we have a motion from the board, or any questions, first of all? Professionals?
No, sir.
Okay, board, what's your pleasure?
So moved. Move to grant the request.
Second. Any questions on the motion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Mrs. Twerdy?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Ms. Coska?
Yes.
Okay, good luck. You can start when the rain stops. Okay, thank you. Okay, second case is 24-1 Carvalho. I always pronounce that wrong, I'm sorry. Carvalho, is that pronounced right? Carvalho Carpentry, Counselor David Esposito.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric LaBeouf. I'm covering for Mr. Esposito. He's a little under the weather. I was a former partner of his, and I'm his son-in-law, so he called me.
Okay.
I have with me Mr. Carvalho, but if he can be sworn in, he's going to answer some questions and give some testimony.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Yes. Thank you.
As referenced, it's case number 2401, Block 64, Lot 15. It's 2611 Marnie Highway. Similar to the prior application, it's a relatively simple bulk variance. The applicant's looking to extend an already pre-existing nonconformity of the front yard setback to extend the property a little bit with an addition, renovate it substantially, bring it in more conformity with the neighborhood from where it is now. We have a review letter from Ms. Newcomb setting forth about 3 separate things. My client has spoken with Ms. Newcomb at length. All 3 of these matters will be addressed and taken care of. The chain link fence is going to be removed. The driveway that was referenced is going to be removed. And there's a comment with regards to the door to a basement. The current property has a door that's going to be renovated so it actually operates to the area. It's going to be renovated to look a little nicer and actually work. So to those 3 comments, they're all going to be addressed. If the board would like, I'd just have my client briefly describe what the project is going to be, what's there now, and what the renovation is going to look like.
Right now, there's an old house that needs a lot of work done, so we're looking to put a 16 by 20 foot addition and do a major renovation, install new windows and everything. The house will be pretty much brand new after it's all said and done.
Okay, thank you.
And, sir, this is going to be a single-family house
That's correct.
as opposed to the duplex proposal you had some time ago.
Yes, duplex not going anymore.
Any questions from the board? Professionals?
I'd like to hear, I'd like to hear from Ms. Newcomb in terms of.
Yes.
So with this
3 issues.
application, I've met with Mr. Carvalho in regards to several of the issues. We took a look at the plans as well and was very happy to see the layout of this house does not have the potential for any form of apartment or anything such as that. It actually is a very nice project. He also is going to be removing the front door and putting a window in there that you see, if you see that on the plan, that no longer will be that front entrance. He's getting rid of that front driveway. The county has contacted our office, and I explained to them that what was going on, so he will not need county approval. I spoke directly with Danielle Scolari over at the county engineer's office. As well as the fencing, we were both in agreement that it should be removed. There's going to be a partial fence that he'll meet the setbacks with, that it's going to be on the right side of the property. It's basically just to give it some definition because of our foot traffic sometimes along Marne Highway. But overall, in reviewing this seems to be a really nice project to rehab that house that has not been in the best condition. So, and again, Mr. Taylor and I had spoken, and we felt that this was something that I would be able to project my thoughts to the board on the applicant's behalf.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other professional comments?
Yes, I have a comment having to do with the ordinance requires a asphalt driveway, so he's looking for a waiver for the stone driveway. We are looking to have some measurements showing how big the driveway is going to be and the depth of the materials that you're going to put on. The other thing I would like to recommend is that they put a concrete apron or at least maybe an asphalt apron from the road to 4 or 5 feet back into the parking area, so it'll keep the stone in the if you're going to let them do the stone, keep the stone in the parking area so it doesn't get up on the street.
So,
How long is this driveway from street and curb to the building?
Well,
I think it's.
More or less, yeah.
The proposed is 20 by 20, you're asking for the actual depth. From the street.
the full distance is about 40 feet of the length of driveway to the rear garage and then like 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, okay. So they add another 10 feet to the right of way, sure.
so if I understand this correctly, if they're going to put asphalt in the driveway, not stones, then they don't require the apron, or,
The asphalt will take the place of the apron, right?
okay. Is that, Counselor, is that clear?
Yes, I'm okay with the asphalt. I was planning on doing that anyways, after the fact.
Asphalt all the way? Okay.
All right.
Good point.
So there's no need for the waiver on that?
No. Okay.
Resolved.
I'll open this application to the public. Any comments on this application? Please raise your hand and be acknowledged, or sit there and hold your peace. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer, may I ask one question of the applicant first?
Yes.
Mr. Cavallo, when we spoke earlier in regards to the piece of fence that you wanted to put on the Warren Highway side, are you looking to do the 4-foot high or the 6-foot high? Because the 4-foot high would not need a bulk variance because the house is only 22.5 feet back. If you do the 6-foot that we would need for that piece that you're looking across, you would need to have a front yard setback for that 6-foot high fence. It is up to you what you're requesting. I'm sorry?
4 foot.
Okay, so at that point, then you're not going to need the bulk variance for that. Okay. I just want to put that on record.
Okay. We have any comments from the folks online? Okay. I'll close public comment.
Move to grant the variances requested, subject to the conditions that the applicant has agreed to tonight.
Second.
Any questions on the motion? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes?
Mrs. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Woody?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Chakotchi?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Casca? Yes. And Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yes. Good luck.
Good luck.
Case C, 24-04, BTC III, Hainesport LLC. Counselor Michael Floyd.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the
Hi,
record,
how are
my
you?
name is Michael Floyd. I'm an attorney with Arthur and Reiner, appearing on behalf of the applicant, BTC3 Hainesport LC Urban Renewal LLC, which has submitted an application for minor subdivision approval for property located along Route 38 and identified as Block 42, Lot 1.05 on the township's official tax maps. The property is located near the intersection of Route 38 and Mount Holly Bypass within the Route 38 Mount Holly Bypass redevelopment area, and the use and development of the property is subject to the corresponding redevelopment plan. With me this evening, we have 2 witnesses. We have Joe Romano, a licensed professional surveyor with Langen Engineering. He is the surveyor of record for this minor subdivision application. And if necessary, we also have Joe Fierro on behalf of the applicant, in case there's any questions about the overall project that this application relates to. But just in terms of some brief background, this board granted preliminary and final major site plan approval in December of 2021 in connection with 2 industrial buildings and related site improvements. Thereafter, the board granted preliminary and final subdivision approval creating this lot in question. And to help refresh the board's recollection, we have 3 exhibits this evening. Exhibit A1 is a copy of that filed subdivision plat, creating lot 1.05. Exhibit A2 are the existing and proposed lot configurations, both for the filed plat that was perfected in 2023 and also the subdivision pending before you this evening. And then if necessary, Exhibit A3 is the subdivision plat that was filed with this application. As I stated earlier, this minor subdivision application is consistent with the redevelopment plan. The applicant is also the designated redeveloper of the property and has an executed redevelopment agreement with the township. And last but not least, and I think most importantly, this minor subdivision plan is consistent with the purchase and sale agreement with the New Jersey Department of Transportation. This entire subdivision application is being submitted to this board to help effectuate a land swap between the applicant and DOT in connection with the existing near side jug handle on Route 38 that is going to be reconfigured for better traffic flow on Route 38 and for the project in general. But I'll ask Mr. Kingsbury if we could have our witnesses sworn at this time.
Mr. Floyd, could you just, Mr. Chairman, there is a din in here
Say it.
that coming from the back of the room, and I'm having trouble hearing Mr. Floyd, and it's not fair to him.
They can certainly use the meeting room.
Okay, so if we could ask for some quiet from the back of the room, please. Appreciate it. Okay, the folks who are being sworn in,
John, raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God. So yes. Is your surveyor, he was not?
That's me.
Oh, you're the surveyor. Oh, okay.
Oh, we need to see it.
Not used to seeing a surveyor in a suit, I guess.
Good change.
Can that be rotated?
One other housekeeping matter before I turn it over to Joe to go through the exhibits this evening is, this is a minor subdivision approval, again, creating the lots to effectuate the land swap between DOT and the applicant, and also creating a new retail lot. Again, all consistent with the redevelopment plan and the redevelopment agreement. Ideally, and pursuant to the municipal land use law, the applicant is required to perfect the minor subdivision approval within 190 days. Depending on how quickly we have DOT review the final subdivision plans and the resolution of approval and get to closing, we may be back before this board asking for an extension of time to perfect that minor subdivision approval. But I wanted to put that out there now for the board. But if there's no other questions, I'd ask Joe Romano to come up to the microphone.
let me just ask one not a question of you folks. Is there anybody in the audience that's here about this case? Because I want to give you an opportunity to look at the exhibits up front. Okay, so proceed. We don't need to change anything.
Joe, just one housekeeping matter. If you can state again your full name for the record and also your position with Langley and your experience, credentials, and licenses.
Sure. Joe Romano, I'm a principal at Langen Engineering in my 45th year, been there. I'm licensed in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Florida, DC, and I've testified before this board in the past.
Yes. Okay, yes, I remember you too. So,
Joe, if you could just walk us through, I guess first Exhibit A1 briefly, which is the plat that was filed in May of 2023, creating Lot 1.05.
Sure. So this creates that lot that we're speaking about. This map was before this board and it was approved and it was filed in May of 23, I believe it was filed. And it was approved as shown. Pretty straightforward.
And if we move to Exhibit A2, because it is difficult to see some of these lots being created, correct. This is Exhibit A2 showing the previous and proposed lot configurations, both for the prior subdivision and the subdivision under consideration this evening.
Again, for clarity, we took the prior subdivision and made a larger dwelling of each existing proposed, which is now existing. And then you can see the existing and the proposed with the jug handle reconfigured, lot 105 for the jug handle in coordination with the DOT's requirements, and then this potential real estate parcel 107.
And that jug handle is making it easier access to get into the warehouse on the south side of 38, right?
So you can make that turn. And that's a little more visible on this.
We go to Exhibit A3.
The conditions, some of the existing conditions show where the current jug handle is and then where the future jug handle is.
We are in receipt of the draft DOT permit. We're expecting the developer's agreement in the very near future, and once everything is executed, we'll be able to commence construction of those right-of-way and jug handle improvements. And once those improvements have been fully installed and inspected by the DOT, we will be in a position to go to closing in connection with the land swap.
Okay. Excuse me. I do remember these other applications that preceded, but there's nothing about a new warehouse going up. It's the ones that have already been approved and.
That is correct. So there's no new development in terms of warehousing or other site improvements proposed with this application. In 2021, the board had granted approval for 2 warehouse distribution facilities. This is often referred to as the old Atlantic Woods site. The applicant has undertaken significant remediation efforts in conjunction with an approved remedial action work plan to bring it into compliance with current standards. It is part of the redevelopment plan. It was always anticipated that we would be back before this board for the jug handle. That first subdivision approval created lot 1.05, where the warehouses will be located. And what it helped to do, if we shift back to Exhibit A1, or maybe Exhibit A2, this is the Nissan dealership. And if you recall, there was a very narrow and angular driveway that split lot 2.01 from lot 1.01. And that last subdivision created a new driveway to DOT standards to access the rear lot, lot 1.05.
And then, this is maybe a little bit aside, but I'm just trying to put the whole picture together. I recall, I think the last time you were in was on the, I guess be the eastern part. Has that property swap been resolved with the motel owner?
Yes, it has.
Okay, good. So this will probably,
This, I would say right now, this is the last piece of the puzzle with Hainesport Township. We do need to get to our closing with DOT. Again, we have the draft DOT permit. We also have State House Commission approval and act of the legislature for this land swap in place. DOT and the officials in Trenton are fully supportive of it. As I mentioned, we may have to come back before this board for an extension of time, depending on how long it takes to construct the improvements and how long it takes for DOT to inspect them.
okay, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from anybody on the board? Professionals? Mrs. Newcomb? No? 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 Okay, that's good news. No, I'm saying everybody, no more questions. Open public comment on this application only, please. Anyone have comment that they wish to express? Anybody online?
What's being swapped?
No? Okay, hearing none and seeing no hands in the audience, I will close public comment and ask the board, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move to grant the minor subdivision application.
The applicant is getting this,
Second?
Who second?
I did.
giving up
Oh, okay, thank you. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Ms. Fusco?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
your time this
Counselor.
evening.
Thank you. I have one. Okay. Okay. Next is case 24-03, Hainesport Family Apartments, Councilor Damian Del Duca. What's that? No.
Good.
Good, and how are you?
If we're short a couple of exhibits, I have more, and I'll put some on the chair here.
This one, quick.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Damian Del Duca, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Del Duca, Lewis, and Burr, and I represent the applicant this evening, which is Hainesport Family Apartments, LLC. As we're getting our exhibits set up, hopefully in a way that as many people as possible can see them, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just give an overview as to who we are and why we're here, and some history, and then we'll get into some testimony. First of all, I have with me my client, Edmund C. Spitel, who's with the Walters Group, which is affiliated with the applicant, Hainesport Family Apartments, LLC. I have our civil engineer, Jay Shulo, with Shulo Engineering, who's setting up the exhibits. And I have our architect, Michael Donovan, there he is, and our traffic engineer, John McCormick, with Dynamic Traffic. And you're going to hear testimony from each of them this evening. The property that we're here for tonight is Block 104, Lot 1.06. It's about 9.6 acres on Creek Road. It's currently undeveloped, raw ground. My client owns the property. It purchased it approximately 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and it owns this site. And we're here tonight to present to you an application for preliminary and final major site plan approval for 72 affordable apartment units that are restricted to families who qualify as low or moderate income families or individuals. The property is in the AH1, Affordable Housing 1 zoning district, which was created for the express purpose of facilitating these 72 units on this specific piece of property. And there's a history here that many of you are familiar with, but just so the record's complete, everyone in the room who may not be as familiar has a sense of the history, because it's quite an involved history that began, I think, in 2017. The Walters Group is a company that specializes in developing 100% affordable residential communities. And an affordable community is a community where the individuals that live there qualify as either low or moderate income individuals. And though, as you know, as a planning board or a land use board, every municipality in the state of New Jersey has an obligation under the law to provide its fair share of affordable housing and to provide a realistic opportunity for the creation of affordable housing in your town and every one of the 565 municipalities in this state. So, like many other towns, Hainesport Township has been dealing with that obligation over many years. It's an obligation that many of your township officials are very familiar with, and it creates challenges. And the application tonight for this property is an outgrowth of that obligation, and it is a substantial portion and component of the township's fulfillment of its obligations. It started, as I said, in 2017. This property on Creek Road was identified by the township as a site that it wanted to develop for a 100% affordable community. And there's been some actions taken by the municipality that I'd like to just briefly review. One is in 2019, the governing body, the committee, adopted Resolution 2019-171-12 on December 10th of 2019. And in that resolution, the Township Committee authorized the execution of an affordable housing agreement with my client, the applicant, and also the expenditure of funds to help facilitate this 100% affordable community. The Township did that because it had collected what's called Affordable Housing Trust Funds, which it's obligated to spend on the provision of affordable housing. And the town, in an effort to satisfy its obligations, adopted that resolution authorizing the execution of that agreement and the spending of those funds to help facilitate and expedite this community so that the town could fulfill its obligations in part. As a result of that resolution, the township did indeed enter into an agreement with the applicant on March 12, 2020, and in that agreement, I'll just summarize as saying that it recognized that the applicant was about to purchase the property, again, as a result of discussions with the municipality, and in that agreement, it pledged financial support for this community. The township pledged financial support because without that financial support, this type of community would never get built. These types of communities are essentially financed through various vehicles, and a primary one is administered through the New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency, known as HMFA. But these communities, in order to happen, really are municipally sponsored, which means that there has to be collaboration with the town to help create the financing that's necessary to spend the town's affordable housing trust funds to help facilitate these communities. So that's why the town entered into that agreement, but in that agreement, it is obvious that the town envisioned this property to be developed for this purpose and for the town to help make that happen by spending some of its trust funds. In 2021, specifically on December 14th of 2021, Hainesport Township adopted ordinance 2021-13, which created the AH1 zoning district for one reason, to allow this community that we're here for tonight for site plan approval to be constructed on this site. That ordinance was codified in your code as section 104-48.1. On July 13th, 2023, the township entered into a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center, which, as most of you, if not all of you know, is the housing advocate that has litigated with most municipalities in the state of New Jersey in order to compel them to comply with their affordable housing obligations. And most, well, more than most, virtually every town in the state of New Jersey has entered into a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. And in that agreement, this community at this location is specifically referenced in two places, Section 11B and in a schedule attached to the agreement. And that agreement clearly envisions that this property would be developed for the affordable housing apartment units that we're here for this evening. In 2023, on October 3rd, 2023, the Township Committee adopted Resolution 2023-115-10, authorizing the township to spend additional monies and to support this community and to increase the number of affordable units from 66 units to 72 units. That was done not arbitrarily, but that was done in order to help the municipality gain more units and to better comply and come closer to full compliance with its affordable housing obligations. In order to create those additional units, additional funds were required, and that resolution authorized the expenditure of additional funds. As a result of that resolution, the same day, the municipality entered into a first amendment to the affordable housing agreement with the applicant, which agreed to loan monies and support this community further and to increase the number of units. So that's the long history, and I apologize for the length of it, but I wanted everyone to understand it. And so that leads us to tonight, which is an application for site plan approval before the planning board. This is, for many of the people here, especially those from the public who may not be familiar with the history that I just outlined, for them, this is the first time maybe that some of them are seeing this application, and we're here tonight to present it. But in the grand scheme of the process of making an affordable housing community like this a reality, this is really the final municipal step in the process. And tonight's process is limited to site plan approval. And as you know, as a land use board, the purpose of a site plan application really is very narrow, focused on whether the applicant complies with your site plan ordinance and other applicable zoning and land use ordinance requirements. That's it. It's not a qualitative analysis relating to the use or the permissibility of the use is permitted. It's not whether you like, dislike affordable housing. It's really not even about traffic, although I know, doing this quite some time, many applications are about traffic, even when it's not legally an issue. Certainly people who live in any town care about traffic. We understand that. We're going to address that. But it's really just about checking the boxes as to whether we meet all of your ordinance requirements. We submitted an application. We have detailed letters from Mr. Miller and Mr. Taylor, and they confirm in their letters essentially that we check the boxes, not in those words, but they confirm that we don't require any variances, that we meet all of your use, bulk, and other zoning ordinance requirements. We meet all of your site design standards with perhaps a few minor exceptions, and therefore, after you hear the evidence that we're going to produce tonight, this is a by right application. And the law in New Jersey is when you're a land use board and you're hearing a site plan application, the question is, do we meet those ordinance requirements? If so, the application must be granted. So I wanted to mention that again for everyone's benefit, because it really is a narrow issue before the board this evening. The two letters that I mentioned are Mr. Taylor's letter dated February 17th and Mr. Miller's letter dated March 1st. I want to thank them for those letters. Our professionals have spoken to them. We don't think we have any issues with those letters. We're going to agree to comply with those letters, other than some clarifications that Mr. Shulo is going to put on the record in a few minutes. But other than those clarifications from Mr. Shulo, we will comply with those two letters. Exhibits. I've handed out exhibits. Exhibit A1 is on the board at the top. It is a color rendering of our site plan superimposed on an aerial. It's called a site rendering. It's dated March 6, 2024, and I've marked that as Exhibit A1. And then I've handed out 3 sheets of architectural renderings prepared by Donovan Architects. Mr. Donovan is here this evening. I don't think they're dated. 3 color sheets. They're intended to show everyone what these buildings will look like. So those are the 2 exhibits that I've handed out. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just mark for the record. I'll give Mr. Kingsbury and Ms. Tiber a copy. I didn't think anyone else would want copies, but just a couple other exhibits that I summarized in my opening statement. One is, Exhibit A3 is Township of Hainesport Resolution 2019-12. Exhibit A4 is the Affordable Housing Agreement between the Township and the applicant. Exhibit A5 is Ordinance 2021-13. Exhibit A6 is Township Resolution 2023-115-10. And Exhibit A7 is the First Amendment to Affordable Housing Agreement. I also have the Fair Share Settlement Agreement, but I won't mark that. I'll just consider that part of the record. So I will hand a copy to Mr. Kingsbury and Ms. Tiber.
Thank you.
Is this A1?
That's A1. A2's behind it. And that's A3.
2 sheet, there's A2 is,
A2 are the architecturals, which are 3 sheets.
okay.
Is that what's on the floor over here?
That is what's on the floor. Mr. Donovan's going to provide some.
That's A3, right?
A1's on the easel, A2 is on the floor, and then the other exhibits that I just handed to Ms. Tiber and Mr. Kingsbury are the various resolutions, ordinances, and agreements that I referenced that I did not hand out to everyone.
All right,
Mr. King, Mr. Del Duca, the sheets that were handed out, the last 3 sheets are all A2.
Correct.
the ones that are pictures,
Yeah, they're renderings, yes, sir.
yeah, but it says Cornerstone at Hainesport, and it's dated March 4th, 2024. That doesn't exist, does it?
So,
Does it?
yeah, I didn't see the date, Mr. Chairman. So Exhibit A2 is dated March 4th, 2024. The words Cornerstone and Hainesport were placed on that by architect because the Walters Group typically names their communities Cornerstone at Hainesport.
Okay.
So that's where that name comes from, and that's why it's on the rendering.
Okay,
Sure.
thanks. And thanks for your introductory comments, it was very helpful.
My pleasure. If you don't have any questions for me, I'm going to have my witnesses sworn. Again, first you're going to hear from Mr. Schuler, a civil engineer, talk about the site plan. Mr. Spitel will tell you about how this community will operate, a little bit about the Walters Group, and how the tenant selection process works, et cetera. Our architect will provide some brief testimony about Exhibit A2 and architectural-related issues, and then you'll hear last from our traffic engineer, Mr. McCormick.
Okay, let's just see, anybody on the board have a question of Mr. Del Duca?
Yeah, Mr. Del Duca, very thorough presentation.
Thank you.
Could you ask Mr. Schuler to discuss this idea, which I don't see on any of the plans? It's a very simple idea, and that is to install a gravel-based walking path in the wetland zone, that huge triangle of land.
Yep.
Otherwise unoccupied, and tie it back into the houses. Seems to me it could be done, and perhaps you could address that.
Sure, be happy to.
And it would be an improvement, I think, for the residents.
We'd be happy to. It's a question of whether that's permissible under the wetlands regulations, and he'll answer that.
I realize that, but.
Would not be an issue for us.
That's the point of raising the question.
Absolutely.
And Counselor, on that, I don't know whether it would be you or one of your witnesses going, I'm just curious, who owns or who are the principals in Hainesport Family Apartments LLC?
So we submitted with our application a disclosure statement. The principals, as I understand it, Mr. Spital will tap me on the shoulder if I get this wrong, are Joseph A. Del Duca, who's also my brother, and Edward Walters.
Okay.
And that should be disclosed on the disclosure statement that's required with all land use applications.
All right.
They are also principals of the Walters Group. The Walters Group develops affordable housing. They use a different entity in each different location, which is why this one is Hainesport Family Apartments LLC.
Okay, and then my last one for now.
I know it's not your last question, Mr.
No,
Chair.
it's not. With regards to, it's a comment raised by Mr. Taylor relative to the number of one-bedroom, two-bedroom, three-bedroom. We'd just like to get that in testimony from whomever you choose to say it.
So I've gone through both letters, and we'll have testimony addressing all the questions in their letters. That's my intention. If I miss any, Scott or Marty will tell me, but we have that testimony planned. I have that information for you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Mr. Shulo, we'll start with you. Well, do you want to swear them all at once, Bob?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes,
Speed it up.
I thought I already did. Okay. Everyone come forward, please, who's going to testify. Right hand up. You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. Shulo. Mr. Shulo, we'll just get situated here, but why don't you begin by reviewing your professional background?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, Jason Schulo, S-C-I-U-L-L-O. I'm a professional engineer, professional planner, licensed in New Jersey, been practicing professionally for almost 25 years, specializing in land use. I have a bachelor's of engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology. I started this firm about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I worked for a couple other larger firms, again, specializing in land use. I've been before this board previously, and say dozens, if not hundreds others in the state doing this exact same work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we'd ask the board to accept Mr. Shulo as an expert in professional engineering.
Any questions from anybody on the board for Mr. Shulo? Okay, hearing none, it's acceptable.
Thank you. Mr. Shulo, were you present during my introductory comments?
I was.
Were they accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes,
Did you prepare Exhibit A1?
we did.
Did I actually describe what it is?
Yes,
All right.
generally. It's a colored rendering of the site plan as submitted to the board.
Okay. Can you take everyone here through the site plan that's proposed?
Sure. So again, this is Exhibit A1. As you'll see on this plan, it's an aerial photo from 2020 with our proposed work overlaid in the brighter colors, the comic strip kind of colors. Across the bottom of the site here is Creek Road. Along the left side, which will be the west, is Morin Highway. To the north of us, you'll see part of the industrial park. On the other side of Creek Road to our east is, to our west, the industrial park to the east. To the west are single-family homes in Mason's Woods. The project site, as you'll see, has a generally odd shape. The yellow is the boundary of the lot, which there's a triangular piece that was just mentioned prior to starting. The wetland complex on it shown here in purple. This little bit of blue that's here is the wetland buffer line. You'll see all the work we propose is outside of that, so heading generally to the west.
The project site has access from Creek Road through one driveway to service what amounts to 72 units, again, in 6 buildings. In addition to the apartment portion of those buildings, there's also community space on the end of the building that's in the northeastern corner. The top lot shown on the outside edge, and you'll see this triangular shaped parking lot. The parking lot contains 122 parking spaces, including 8 electric vehicle charging station parking spaces as required by state law. What you'll see in the mustard color is stormwater management features that are in that brownish mustard color to signify that there will be a sand bottom, which is required under the state law, our state rules for stormwater. And you'll see also landscape plants, an extensive amount that wrap the site to create buffering, along with some trees in the middle of the site.
Is this that Ukrainian site?
It's okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that site you just asked about, Bob, is this one right here.
Yeah.
The tooth that's cut out.
And what site is that, just so everyone's
It's known
clear?
as the Bosniak Sedell.
Okay.
They have the full usage, you'll see a basketball court and residential building.
And our site wraps around that?
It does.
Okay, continue, please.
So, the design itself is relatively simple in that there's full compliance with RSIS. We require no variances, as mentioned, no design waivers, other than a couple minor things which we'll touch on relative to some of the features raised in the letters. But by and large, fully compliant with state law for sure, and under the local ordinance, the parts that are applicable, we mostly comply with. There's a centralized trash area that we show in the back corner here. This is something that Walters does exclusively, that unless someone copy off, which has happened. But generally, they do in all of their communities, they do a centralized trash location that becomes much more convenient, safer, and cleaner for the community, rather than dumpster pads and enclosures all over the site. There's one large enclosure that has a compactor in it, an open top, and recycling can that gets serviced by a private hauler that Walters retains, and creates no inconvenience to the neighborhood, actually more convenient, as mentioned. There's also pedestrian connectivity with sidewalks through the site. There's also a sidewalk shown along Creek Road that's going to come down and connect to the walking path that runs west down Creek Road. Oh, excuse me, east down Creek Road. The site is serviced by public water and sewer and all the other public utilities. It has, as I mentioned, no impact to the wetland features. And just to hit the question that was raised by Mr. McKay, the idea of placing a walking path through this while in Google, and I just want to make sure it's clear, we would do that, other than this area is relatively steep, and I say relatively in that from one end of the site to the other is over 20 feet of fall. So it drops significantly through the woods here, and the walking path would be difficult, not only from a permitting perspective, but to make sure that it would be usable and be safe to walk. So we'll look into it, but chances are we won't be able to do it.
I've looked at the lot. Yeah, there is a rise, but it isn't anything insurmountable. I mean, if you are a walker, unless you're handicapped, you ought to be easily able to negotiate the terrain if an appropriate wood chip base or gravel base path is put in.
We'll talk with Marty about the ability to maybe make that safe pursuant to whatever standards may apply to it. I don't know if accessibility requirements would apply, but if they don't, there's a chance. And of course, subject to permitting from DEP, we'll look into it. So we'll raise conditions of approval to do that.
Thank you.
So depending on the permitting issues, if I can, Mr. Chairman, if there are no recreation facilities, benches, or anything else on it, it can be an undeveloped trail. It can be a mown path. The concern we've seen with wood chips, they get displaced from storms, and if they aren't maintained, they just become grass and weeds over time. So it may make more sense, depending on the disposition of the trees in other areas, at their limit of clearing around the basin would provide, they have pretty much a loop internally, but it ends kind of at both sides near their trash enclosure. If they extended that around sort of at the toe of grading near their basin, that might provide something without having to get into the woods and into those wetter, much steeper slopes, if that would be agreeable to the board.
Well, I think it's an important opportunity to give the residents. And even if the thing winds up being a quarter of a mile long, or a loop of a quarter mile, or a third of a mile, and it's a loop You're giving them an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have. And it's-
Going by Scott's advice, I think that we could probably make that work, keeping it around the basin.
The other question I had, you mentioned the sidewalk going toward Hainesport Mount Laurel Road. Is there a sidewalk that's going to go to the underpass?
No.
Okay. There's a bus line that runs on on Norton Highway. Have you thought about giving pedestrian access to that bus line?
That's, I would rather have, Mr. Spital talk about that, it's not part of the work that we've done, but, Walters may have to consider that.
Okay, I'm just putting it out there.
Hell of a walk.
I think that, to pick up on Mr. McKay's comment, because when you gave your answer, I said, wow, because all of the paperwork that I read, you folks presented to the state and so forth, plays up the fact that it's the intersection of Creek Road and Marne Highway, and it's available for businesses, residents, restaurants, public transportation. But it's like, how do you, I think your same question you have.
How do you get
How do you
there?
get there from your concept? Because I don't know if you've ever driven under that overpass, the railroad, but it's enough of a task for two cars to, they can't go in there together. And people, I'm surprised that there haven't been more complaints or, thank God, no injuries, but
And I'm not sure which applications you mean, they weren't ones that my office did.
I don't know, I got this many papers last Friday and spent a lot of time reading through it. I could find what I'm addressing in one application, but it does make reference to public transportation. And the only public transportation that I know is on Marne Highway or Route 38.
So, Mr. Chairman, the application for funding, likely, Mr. Spital, really, we should have Mr. Spital address this, but my understanding is that the availability of public transportation is one criteria that HMFA looks at, and that may have been referenced in some of the papers that you looked
Yeah.
at. I don't know what you looked at, though.
But how does a resident of your project get to the public transportation? That's my question. I think, Mr. McKay, you were raising the same point, right?
Well, sure. I mean, there's only two ways to go. You get the long, long walk out to Route 38, or the short walk to Warren Highway. But somebody else will address that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Almost done with the site stuff, so in addition to previous testimony, I want to make sure it's clear to record, the stormwater management system that's included with this application is fully compliant with the state stormwater rules that are referenced in the new ordinance, as well as the residential site improvement standards that we're required to conform with pursuant to state law. Along with the other improvements that I mentioned, we're also size compliant. And I mentioned the landscaping around the buffering around the site, which again is compliant with what the AH1 standards have relative to the required landscaping. And other than that, questions, I'm happy to answer any questions relative to the site layout.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I have a question, please. What did you say that the area was that it surrounds with basketball court there? What is that building that's in there with it?
This piece here, it's under ownership of a group called the Bosniaks of Delaware Valley.
What is it?
What's the use? I'm not sure, man, we haven't been on this.
It's a social,
It's a
social club.
club.
And
Yeah, it's been there.
am I correct that
Okay.
the applicant purchased the rest of the property from, the Bosniaks owned that originally, didn't they?
Correct. My client purchased the property that we're here for tonight from the Bosniaks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a social club with athletic fields and parking area,
Okay, thank you.
basically. Clubhouse in the middle.
Oh, it's a clubhouse, yeah.
Yeah, no alcohol, sir.
Let me just continue with Mr. Shulo, and of course, the board can ask any questions. Mr. Shulo, is it correct that the town codified the Affordable Housing 1 zone in section 48.1? Is it correct that that zone permits one principal use, which is a multifamily affordable apartment community?
It is.
Do we meet all the requirements of section 48.1?
We do.
Do we meet all other applicable township land use ordinance requirements. Do we require any variances? Let's look at Mr. Miller's letter dated, I believe it's March 1st. I'm going to go to page 3, and I mentioned in my introduction that we're going to comply with the 2 letters, other than as clarified during your testimony, and that's what we're going to do now, everybody. The first one I want to clarify or ask you to address is on page 3 in the stormwater management section, comment number 12, which states that the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the administrative code relating to dam safety standards, or receive something in writing from DEP stating they are not applicable. Can you address that, please?
Sure. So, the short answer is we are compliant with the dam safety standards. The reason that this comment was raised is I mentioned the amount of fall that comes from the developed portion of the site into the wetland area. So Mr. Miller asked a question, said it plainly, it's not something that we typically do, so confirm that you're compliant. Under the dam safety standards, there's a section where they classify types of dams depending on the way that they're constructed, the type of water that they actually impound, downstream facilities, and they're classified in classes 1 through 4. Class 4 being I'll say the lowest standard or the one with the least amount of restrictions, and that's what this qualifies as, if it is a dam at all. So under class 4, it's a permit by rule, meaning we don't have to get an approval from DEP. All we have to really do is make sure that the amount of stormwater runoff that comes through our system, it passes through that spillway safely and with a safety factor of 50%. So 150% of the flow of the stormwater management tanks. So we will revise the calculations to include that analysis. We've already done it, and it's compliant. So we do meet that standard, and we don't need to get anything from DEP.
So we meet that standard. You'll submit updated information to Mr. Miller so that he can confirm that you meet that standard, and that's how we're addressing that comment.
Yes, as a condition of approval, we'll have to do that.
Okay.
Can you point out to us about where the spillway is and where the outflow is?
So there's the main spillway, or main outfall is a stormwater management structure that's more or less a stormwater inlet with a pipe leading. And that's in the corner of the basin, and the outfall pipe lands in this wooded area here. The emergency spillway goes out towards the ditch that runs along the edge of the tracks. So that's pointing towards the side of the site going to the north.
The next comment is the next one, comment 13 on page 3, which states that the applicant's engineer, which is you, shall coordinate with Mr. Miller's offices on items relating to compliance with the stormwater rules. Mr. Shulo, do we comply with all applicable stormwater management rules?
We do. I want to make sure that we get in the record that this comment sounds innocuous generally, that we just have to coordinate with our office. I want to make sure it's clear. We submitted detailed stormwater management calculations and report. Mr. Miller's office reviewed it, and it is compliant with the stormwater management rules. He's asked us a few questions, but I just want to be clear that we are fully compliant with both the state rule, which is referenced in RSIS, which is also referenced in the township standard.
Okay.
How deep is that detention basin?
The total depth of water stored in the basin is 2 feet. It's shallow.
And the basin itself is a little deeper than 2 feet?
Laid at 3.5 feet is a freeboard.
Okay, does the code require a fence around that or not?
No.
And there's no fence path?
No, it's a dry basin, so it's clear, it infiltrates and,
Right.
short.
It's only a detention basin, not a holding pond.
Yes.
Might not be clear after tonight.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious.
I got, when I put it into my GPS to make sure I knew that there was any issues with getting here, I got a little warning saying flood warnings, whatever. And I live down by the beach, so it's, my yard has the flood water in it.
Yes. Anything else on comment 13, Mr. Shulo?
No.
Okay. Comment 15 says an additional soil test is needed in Basin 1, which is out by the road, correct?
Yes, this small feature here.
All right. We'll provide that as a condition of approval. Comment number 19 in that same section on page 3. Okay, comment number 16, which I did not have marked, states that you will analyze the impacts of the groundwater mounding on the stability of the slope adjacent to the basin, presumably the larger basin. Please address that.
Sure, so Mr. Miller and I spoke about this. The concern was generally that when stormwater infiltrates and it goes into the ground, it generally creates a mound where the groundwater table spreads laterally. When it hits the water, it can't go down, so it goes left and right. When Mr. Miller was concerned that if it does that, because of the slope on the side, that maybe it would start to seep out of the slope itself. We did the mounting analysis. It's in a section of the stormwater management report that's a portion that's, again, a state standard. what we're gonna do as condition of approval, we know that it's not an issue, we're gonna create a graphic depiction of that that's more detailed to make sure Mr. Miller's office can see that and review it and analyze it and confirm it. So we'll be compliant,
Okay.
we'll remain compliant.
Comment 19 talks about you providing hydraulic grade line calculations, et cetera. I won't get too technical. I'll let
try
you
not-
address that
I'll try
comment.
not to either. So generally, Mr. Miller raised this concern because he wants to make sure that if we have a large storm event that's larger than the design storm that the pipes are required to be designed to, that it doesn't leave the site and end up where it's not supposed to, anywhere else, a neighboring property, creek road, whatever. So in the RSIS, New Jersey Residential Site Improvement Standards, there's a section, and this is what Mr. Kingsbury, we respectfully request the condition be written to address. There's a section under RSIS, it's 5:21-7.2, parentheses C5, that has this, generally this same type of standard in it, but it's written more clearly as to what the requirement needs to be under the RSIS, which is what we have to comply with. This section, this isn't out of the ordinance, the comment that Mr. Miller made. It was a practical comment, it's a good comment, so just to make sure we will address that in our revised response.
So we're proposing to address comment 19 by demonstrating that we comply with RSIS, the section you
Yeah,
quoted.
generally what that section says is.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. That section says that if there's a localized condition that's a concern, that's how you address it.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing.
Great. Next page. The next one I had was comment 29 on page 4.
This one we didn't talk about, but I want to make sure for, item 28, you asked for a wetland letter of interpretation. There was one issued in 2022, we'll provide a copy of that. That wetland line shown on the plan is submitted, is the line that was approved and verified by DEP.
Okay. Comment 29 asks for a lighting plan to be submitted. It's my understanding that one was submitted with our site plan?
It was,
Okay. Does the lighting plan comply with all applicable requirements and standards?
does.
That was all I had on Mr. Miller's letter. Was there anything else that you had on Mr. Miller's letter?
I had to.
Will you comply with the other comments set forth in his letter other than just as testified just now?
Yes.
Okay, let's look briefly at Mr. Taylor's letter. And I begin there on page 4, and his letter is dated February 17th, if I recall correctly, yes. So the first comment that I have for you, Mr. Shulo, is comment number 14, which correctly points out that we propose a 5-foot wide asphalt walkway, and he points out that the ordinance requires a 4-foot wide concrete walkway. Will we comply with that?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Comment 15 states that the rear yards of buildings E and F back up the Creek Road, and he asks us to address the appropriateness of a fence there. Can you show everyone where that is on the plan, first of all, on A1?
Sure, it's the two buildings that are closest to Creek Road with the landscape buffer between them and Creek Road.
And we're not proposing a fence there, correct?
No, the fence would be in the front yard, and it's something that I guess could be done, but we thought that it was better suited to be landscaping rather than a fence.
Okay, can you give everyone an idea of the landscaping that's proposed there, generally?
Actually, I'm gonna pull up another exhibit. This one was.
So this
part
is
of
Exhibit A2, probably page 2 of Exhibit A2?
Second sheet of Exhibit A2, which to orient everyone, this is Creek Road, across the sheet here, this is our driveway into the site. This is one of the buildings of the two that I mentioned, the other one will be off the sheet. This is the landscape buffer as proposed. These are the species and locations that are shown on the landscape.
So those buildings will be well buffered, and we prefer landscaping over a fence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Comment 5 in the landscape section, which is on page 5 of Mr. Taylor's letter, talks about tree caliper. Can you address that comment, please?
Yeah, so this section that's referenced is generally the tree protection and replacement portion of the ordinance. So the AH1 ordinance, or section of the ordinance, generally replaces remainder parts of the ordinance. It doesn't have any discussion about tree replacement. But when that ordinance was created, the layout that's shown on this plan generally was included in drafting that ordinance. We didn't have the detailed landscaping, but in the end, we didn't propose and don't propose to do tree survey or tree replacement pursuant to this section of the ordinance because it's a cost-generative measure pursuant to the COA regulations. It's really not permitted to be imposed. But in the end, what we came to a general agreement that, talking to Mr. Taylor, that rather than go through, as you can see anyway, the site, the way that between the yield the township desired and the available land area to try to replace the trees that can't physically fit. So what we propose is reforestation in the form of planting of a mix of saplings, some smaller trees as discussed, and a few shrubs that'll make up generally the balance of what would be reforestation requirement, just in smaller form. And the exact quantity, I'm gonna pull up the email because it came late. And Scott, I may need you to confirm too. So my understanding is it was going to be 5 1¼ inch caliber trees, which will decide on locations in the field with Mr. Taylor after construction, during construction. 10 1-gallon container shrubs, and 300 seedlings. Does that sound right, Scott?
10,
Number
Number-
5, 1-gallon containers.
yeah, I think you said shrubs on that, but I think it's trees.
Okay.
Oh, the smaller trees, okay, yep.
And this is something, Mr. Chairman, we had a conversation with Mr. Spital and exchanged some emails. For affordable housing projects, the courts in the state have directed municipalities to not create unnecessarily cost-generative items within those approvals. Reforestation has been identified as one of those. So the applicant has offered, and we really don't have room to fully comply with all the reforestation that would be required. But they are proposing about 315 trees through seedlings and saplings, and we believe that that's consistent generally with the intent, if not the letter of the ordinance. They would request a waiver from having to locate all of those trees. The one thing that I would supplement is the time and expense to just go and survey those. They really don't have any flexibility to be able to move buildings to preserve trees in the center of the site because of the program necessary to develop the 72 required affordable housing units. The one thing that was also identified with Mr. Spital that I assume the applicant would agree to, in lieu of that tree survey, that they would stake the clearing limits at the field, walk that with our office and Mr. Miller's office, so if there are any desirable large specimens near the limit of clearing, that we could try to work the tree protection fencing around those. That's really the only places that we have flexibility to try to preserve some of those larger specimens on the site. So as long as the board agrees, we believe that that solution and those conditions would be generally consistent with the affordable housing parameters in which we're trying to operate and the intent of our ordinance.
And we have no objection to that condition.
So if we eventually get to approval, anything that says subject to Mr. Miller and Mr. Taylor's approval, you're happy with it all?
No, I wouldn't say that, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
okay, well,
That's
try
right.
it, give it a shot.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I agree with a condition that broad.
Okay.
But certainly on
How
that
would you
issue,
like
we have
to
no
make-
objection.
Make it.
Nor that he would be happy.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we have no objection with the condition as stated by Mr. Taylor, and we'll take those as they come.
okay.
We'll deal with them as they come,
All right.
those types of issues. That was all the questions I had for Mr. Shulo. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Shulo?
I do. So, Basin 1, that will not have a fence around it either?
No, that one's very shallow.
Okay. And then, if there were to be a walking path around Basin 2, would there need to be a fence there because there's a walking path?
But we would put the walkway not on top of the basin, so it wouldn't be kind of like looking.
Okay, so
on
it's
the
definitely around the outside of that. Okay.
And even if it did end up on the top, I'm not familiar of any requirement in either the stormwater management regs that would require a fence in that location. I only say that in case there needs to be flexibility with where that goes from a grading standpoint or clearing
Yeah, and
standpoint.
there is no standard in the stormwater regs that require a fence.
Okay, I just want that on record.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be it, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody have any other questions? If not, Mr. Shulo isn't leaving.
Well, let me,
Well, we'll
a
get to the
question that
public.
came to mind, Mr. Shulo.
Get-
Are you the guy dealing with the EV charging stations and placement of those?
Yeah, generally, yes.
you're providing for 8. Is that expandable as the years go past?
Yeah, if the market demands it, absolutely, yes.
On that subject, I saw I'm trying to put my hands on it right now. I saw where 4 of them are. Where are the other 4?
So, we have, there are, well, it's a total of, 6 in the middle of the site, and then, on another one, they're all in the central part of the site. There's 6 on the north side, or sorry, the west side, and 1 or 2, sorry, on, I got it backwards. 6 on the east side, 2 on the west side.
Okay, I'm looking at CO 101. You familiar with that?
Yeah, the site plan, yeah.
Okay, I only see 4.
Can I come up and show you?
Yeah, please,
So
just
on-
show me where they are.
Each pedestal has 2 charging ports on it.
Oh, so that's 8.
Yeah, so that one, you can see there's center between the 2 spaces. It'll
Right.
serve both purposes.
Okay. All right, didn't know there were 2 on each
Yeah,
one.
that's-
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
I just, this is a bit of a, well, I don't know, never mind. I'm not going to make the comment.
Okay. Well, we'll continue. If
Get in
anyone has
trouble.
any other questions for Mr. Shulo, he'll be here. Our next witness is Ed Spital. Good evening, Mr. Spital. Can you begin by telling us what your title is with the Walters Group?
Sure. Ed Spital, Vice President of Development for the Walters Group. Been with Walters in this capacity for over 20 years now.
And are you personally familiar with this proposed community?
Yes, I am.
And have you been involved in the oversight of the planning that has led us to this evening?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell everyone who is the Walters Group in the context of their experience with affordable housing?
Certainly, the Walters Group is, as you said, an affordable housing developer.
Could you-
Been with them
Yeah.
for 20 years.
Could you use the microphone, please? 'Cause
Sure.
we have to record this.
Sorry
It's-
about that.
Okay.
For about the past 15 or so years, we've been exclusively focused on developing affordable housing. We handle everything soup to nuts, that is the development, which we're here for tonight, the approval process. We handle the construction, we're our own GC, and we handle the management aspect of it, which includes the leasing, the maintenance, and the compliance.
Will these 72 units that are proposed here in Hainesport operate similar to the other communities that you have in New Jersey?
Yes, they will.
And roughly how many other similar communities does the Walters Group currently own?
I would say we have approximately 2,000 total units, and I would say 2.5 dozen different communities across the state.
Were you present during my introductory comments?
Yes, I was.
Were they factually accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, they were.
And so will the residents here be individuals and families that meet the income eligibility restrictions?
Yes.
And will this community be administered in accordance with all applicable rules, including what's known as UHAC, Uniform Housing Affordability Controls?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And will this community have units that are restricted for moderate income, low income, and very low income individuals?
Yes, it will.
And those are defined terms under the affordable housing rules, correct?
Yes.
And there are certain income limits that those people have to meet to be eligible for those units, right?
Yes.
And there's a certain percentage of units that each of those have to occupy.
Correct.
For example, half the units have to be low and very low, and the other half can be moderate income, correct?
That's correct.
And at least 13% of all of the units have to be eligible for just very low income individuals, correct?
Yes.
And those aren't your rules, those are state rules.
That's correct.
And those are also consistent with the settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center and the court order that was entered enforcing that settlement agreement or approving that settlement agreement.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can you explain briefly to everyone the tenant selection process, or how the tenant selection process works?
Sure. So we have an approved affirmative fair housing marketing plan. That's something that gets approved by the state of New Jersey. And what happens is during the construction period, we'll start to send out notice to interested residents and, start to compile a list, oftentimes with the municipality's help and website. As we get closer to, I'll say within 30 days of our first CO, we'll send out a more formal notification and advise folks of an upcoming lottery. We'll conduct the lottery, and during that, or shortly thereafter, we'll have a much more rigorous screening process, credit check, criminal background, income, and that process there gets done by our own compliance team, it gets done by a third party, and it also gets done by the state of New Jersey and our tax credit investor. Following that, there's an annual recertification process every year.
And in the recertification process, does that confirm compliance with the eligibility requirements?
Yes.
And so those tenants are selected in accordance with uniform rules that apply to every municipality that has communities like this?
That's correct.
Okay. So if I have a friend who wants to rent a place at this community in Hainesport, do I just call you and get them in?
Absolutely not.
How does it work?
There's no way to, the affordable housing law does not allow any preferential treatment, just as if, it just doesn't allow it.
So is it randomly selected through a lottery process from all those pools of candidates, for all those candidates that meet the applicable eligibility requirements?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell everyone what amenities will be proposed here?
Sure. So on the exterior, we have a tot lot, which typically has a swing set, a jungle gym, for lack of a better term. We're proposing grills, benches, tables, things of that area. And again, kind of in the vicinity of the tot lot and our community, our clubhouse. Within the clubhouse, there's our leasing office, there's our community room, there's a fitness center, there's there's an area for computers, and I'll say that space is roughly 2,500 square feet or so. So that's kind of the overview of the exterior and the interior amenities.
One of the comments in Mr. Taylor's letter was that we consider adding grills and tables, and we'll do that, will we?
Yes.
Will we not? Okay. How will the Walters Group handle property management for this site?
Sure. So as I said, we handle everything from soup to nuts. The management includes all of the different functions. We have 24/7 maintenance on call. We have many communities in the area, as most of you know. Our community down the street in Lumberton, Delanco, Evesham. So we have a lot of staff that is in this immediate vicinity, and we will manage these just like we do all of those.
Okay, the last question I have relates to the sidewalk that I think Mr. McKay brought up. Were you present during that question?
Yes, I was.
So I think the question-
Walking path, you're gonna
I'm
get to
gonna-
that.
I was gonna
You're on the
address-
sidewalk to the,
Sidewalk to Martin Highway.
got it.
Yeah, so why aren't we proposing a sidewalk along Creek Road towards Martin Highway, if you know?
Yes, I do. So as you said earlier, we've been working on this for many years, and transportation was something that was very important depending on the funding source that we were seeking, particularly the 9% tax credit realm. That required public transportation to be with a half mile as a crow flies. This particular funding opportunity does not have that requirement. However, we still, it's just good planning to try to have, to be near public transportation. So we looked at having a sidewalk toward the railroad bridge. We didn't think that was a safe option, as you folks have mentioned and observed. It's barely safe for vehicles to get through, much less encouraging pedestrian traffic through there. Similarly, there were discussions about, well, what could you do through the back of the property, through the industrial park? We're more than happy to make a connection there. The problem that we ran into there was, within the industrial park, there's no sidewalks in there, and we didn't think that encouraging pedestrian traffic into an industrial complex that has the railroad cars going through and the trucks and all, we didn't think that was a smart option either. The other thing I would say, kind of anecdotally, is with the exception of maybe our community in Delanco, which is immediately adjacent to the light rail station, pretty much all of our residents have their own car. They do not rely on public transportation. And so, in a suburban setting like this, in a suburban setting like our Lumberton community, which is behind the Walmart, there's just not a lot of walking going on there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Spital. Any questions for Mr. Spital?
Yes.
I have one, I think you said the answer indirectly. All 72 units are going to be rental, no for sale, right?
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure we all know and understand that.
Sure.
And what, you mentioned about the screening process for the applicants. They do criminal background checks. What does it take to not let me come in there as a tenant? Not me personally, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, what I can say is that if you've been convicted of a crime, and Damien, as my attorney, probably knows the definition of crime in New Jersey better than I do.
Don't count on it.
Well, suffice it to say, if you've been convicted of a crime, that rules, that immediately rules you out right then and there. It's a very stringent process. Again, something that's done by us, by the state, and by a third party to ensure that we all have the most quality tenants we can possibly have.
I mean, I think by a crime, felonies are probably out, but what about misdemeanors?
I don't know about
Don't know,
misdemeanors.
okay.
Absolutely a felony.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Kelly, I know you had a question?
Yes, I don't know if this is the right time to ask it. You had stated in some place that I read that you were going to put fencing along the back of your property at the railroad. Is that still going to happen?
I'm going to ask Mr. Shulo to answer that, if I may.
So the area that fencing is going to be proposed is along this eastern property line adjacent to the industrial park. We're going to have a board-on-board or vinyl fence that runs along that line.
Is it going to turn and come down a little bit from,
Down towards Creek Road?
yeah,
There's no intention to do that now.
because part of that industrial park does there, and they also have the train that goes back there for one, a siding of that train goes back to one of their buildings in the back.
Well, we'll certainly want to create the most effective screen, so we can look at returning that if that's the case.
Okay.
I think we were under the impression that that was all we would need to screen the industrial
And,
part.
This property immediately adjacent to the south is a single-family residential, so we're leaving woods along that edge.
Well,
No.
the point is, if you return it, there's a sort of a line of sight that you might still see things.
Going
Right.
through here for this, you're talking about the siding that runs down parallel
Yeah.
to the driveway.
Yes. Right, then my second question is, you mentioned there will probably be children, I assume, in this development.
Yes.
Where are the children going to be getting the school bus? Where is the school bus stop proposed?
We have not had any interaction yet with the school board, but I would imagine that if it's not in the site, then I would imagine it's at the same or similar location as to where the Mason's Wood students get picked up.
Is that typically dictated by the school district? And, or at J?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we don't pick, they pick.
Okay.
And the answer to your question was yes.
It was.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because, again, we're recording, so.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do have a couple questions as well. On the fencing, is in the Davenport Village that we have here, that Walters Group has done the new townhouses there. By the way, they do look very good. I'm hoping that these look as well as that. Are we looking to have an 8-foot-high fence? I know we do have one over Davenport Village. Is this going to be a 6-foot or 8-foot-high fence? Do we know yet?
So let me put it to you this way. I'll let Mr. Shulo answer it, but to the extent your ordinance limits it to 6 feet, we did not apply for a variance for that. If the board wants an 8-foot fence, it has the authority to grant a variance as long as there are sufficient reasons, but we didn't request any variances. Most towns limit it to 6 feet. I don't know what, you know, Kathy, I'm sure, but I don't know what your ordinance says about height.
Right, when this development,
Fence.
over Davenport Village there, that was even before my time, and that's
Right.
forever ago. They allowed the 8-foot highs because of the fact of the residents that live behind that off of Patriot Drive.
Right.
I just wasn't sure, because I didn't notice anything in regards to height in any of the letters.
It's shown as 6 feet
Thank you, Scott.
on that rear.
Is there? Okay. Let me see if there was anything else. Where is the tot lot in here? I apologize on,
See the far right, that maroon box?
This here?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And then, I guess a
no.
question is, do
That
they
one.
allow pets here, like dogs? Are
They
they?
do, I believe we limit them to a certain size, but yes, we do.
The only reason I question that is because I saw a dog in your picture. So I was wondering how that works with the load mods. Is there any kind of dog stations that will be here for cleanup?
Yes, we do have stations with the bags and receptacles
Okay,
for that, yes.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I recall at some point, maybe it was when we did the public session, the resident to the east, the single-family home, I believe there was conversation about there being a pool, and there's some concerns, and I believe there was talk about a fence on that side, if maybe we can go back and look at our notes, or,
Oh, yeah, listen,
I recall something.
if the board wants to return a fence there, I'm sure we can do that.
I know she expressed some concerns, because there's a pool there and liability, and,
So there's probably a fence then if there's a pool.
They're lobby.
Yeah, I would think so, right? So, yeah, as long, again, most towns have separation requirements between fences. I don't know where that fence is, but we're happy to look at putting a fence along that.
Well, we wouldn't do it on the lot line because we'd have to clear streets to do it. We would have to pull it in along the edge of the top line.
Yeah.
And it would become the back edge of the tot lot, or
Correct.
just off.
We can look at that. I would also add that in one of our original iterations, we showed a very large building right up
Yes,
against there.
that's
And part
right.
of her feedback was, if there's anything that you could do to have a lower scale building, we were thankfully able to have no building immediately.
right,
adjacent.
okay.
Okay.
Sir, I have one more question, and I don't know if you're going to get to it, but the fire marshal did not approve this because you needed another fire hydrant within the,
We didn't get a fire marshal's letter, so I'm not familiar with that,
I emailed it.
or at least I didn't.
There's already two.
Thanks, Paul. Okay.
But we already have two items. So we say a second, and we already have two.
So let me, so,
You
can
can
I
have it.
have this one, Paul? Thank you. So Ms. Costa's been kind enough to give me the February 28th letter from Fire Official Myers, dated February 28th. And it says, quote, "Complex needs to have another fire hydrant in the development to give the fire department a second water supply. This is a one-way in, one-way out, and the fire department cannot run a tanker shuttle because of the railroad bridge," end quote. So, Mr. Shulo, is it correct that we have two hydrants already?
We do,
And that you'll speak to the fire official and address this comment?
yes. And then be clear on the second part of the comment about not being able to run a tanker shuttle because of, he means the crossing here, not because of our site.
Gotcha.
So that's, yeah, what we have right now, there's a fire hydrant at the driveway, and one in the corner in the back, but we'll work that one.
Okay.
And that's compliant with RSIS. It's actually more than needed by RSIS.
So what's compliant with RSIS?
The fire hydrant layouts, it's in the plan.
Okay, it's just for everyone's benefit. Is RSIS the statewide uniform set of rules for all residential development?
And it, yes, and it does two things. It makes it so that we have a minimum standard to comply with, it also imposes stuff that the municipality can't ask for beyond.
Right. And it's intended to create a uniform set of rules for all, for excuse me.
Sorry.
That's okay. For residential development for all towns, correct?
Yes,
Does this plan comply with all applicable RSIS standards?
it does.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, we would suggest that, as a condition of approval, that the applicant address this comment with Mr. Myers. In the very unlikely event we can't resolve that comment with him, we would come back before the board, but I can't imagine that will be necessary.
In regards to the sewer, is there, with Mount Holly MUA, is there any type of pump station on this facility? Or has that been addressed with Mount Holly MUA, how that's gonna be factored
So,
in?
at the intersection of Weatherville Court and Creek Road, there's a manhole.
Okay,
We're gonna connect to that, and there's sufficient depth to not have to have any pump station for the site.
okay, good to know,
We have
thank
a
you.
good amount of fall across the site.
Any other questions for Mr. Spitell or Mr. Shula?
Just a clarification, when you
say there's no preference, not even for veterans, with regards to?
I believe we can give I'd have to check and see. There are a lot of communities where we do give a veteran's preference. I don't think that we would be prohibited from doing that here. And so if we're able to, we're more than happy to. We do it in a lot of cases. I was just talking about preference in terms of friends or family or.
And it had come up in conversation with some people, and, it'd be nice if we could do something, for the veterans, just somehow we could market that particular fact to them.
Absolutely.
I guess one of my last questions is that I see, and I've been here through the years in regards to the Bosniak and their basketball courts coming to the board, and they have all the approvals. I see that there is landscaping that will be between those properties. Is there any type of fencing that is going to be there so that no wandering into their basketball courts, or, has that been thought of?
Mr. Shula, are we proposing a fence there?
We are not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Spider. You mentioned that there was going to be on-site management and 24-hour.
So we have folks on site, our leasing office, our management staff, and then separate and apart from that, we have 24/7 maintenance. We'll have maintenance folks on the property. They might not necessarily be on the property 24/7, but they are in the immediate vicinity.
And the managers themselves, are they community association managers certified or?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Unless there are other questions, our next witness is Mr. Donovan, who's our architect. Will just provide some brief testimony regarding the buildings. I'll keep going unless I'm asked not to. Mr. Donovan, why don't you step up, share the microphone. Let me do this. You got it. So, Mr. Donovan, are you a principal with Donovan Architects?
I am.
Can you briefly review your professional background for the board?
Sure. I've been the owner of Donovan Architects for 19 years. I've spoke in front of multiple municipalities throughout the state. My license is in good standing. I'm licensed in New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania.
Okay. And did you prepare the architectural plans that were submitted with the site plan application?
I did.
And did you design the buildings that are proposed for this community here in Hainesport? And is Exhibit A2 a color rendering of three color renderings of the proposed buildings?
Yes.
Can you, using Exhibit A2, give everyone just an overview of the proposed architecture, including building materials, story height, and orientation?
Sure. So the first view is from the front entrance and from Creek Road. And we have.
Excuse me, Mike, I'm just going to ask you to slide around a little bit so
sure,
as many
sure.
people can see.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So you can see that it's, this is the landscaping plantings taken right from the landscape plan. There's a nice buffer there. We have two types of building here. We have what we're calling a townhome style apartment, which is direct entry. It's basically 2.5 stories. There's a town or a flat, and the 3-bedroom is a 2-story unit that's over a flat. So that's where you say 2.5 stories. And then there are garden style apartments that have a common entrance, and those are towards the back of the site. So the visual impact from Creek Road is this small scale townhome style apartments that look really in keeping with the area. So this is the view. We were asked to look at the scale of that building in particular, and I think it addresses it well. It breaks the scale down with material changes, and that was one of the comments. And then there's the back of the two smaller scale buildings along this side. And then I'm going to go to the next exhibit.
And the next exhibit is just page 2 of A2, everybody.
Okay, so this is the townhome style apartments. And this is where that master suite that I'm saying 2.5 story. There's a master bedroom up in that gets your third bedroom. And this is a flat unit, one-story unit. And it's designed in particular to get accessibility. And the deep recessed units are the ones that are ground floor flats, which are either adaptable or accessible. So we've done a few communities with similar type of style units. And I was the architect of the Davenport building, by the way. And Walter's built that.
So what you see on that page, which building is that showing on the site plan?
That is showing,
Site plan's right in front of you, right behind that board.
yeah, that's the 12 unit.
So that's the one closer to the road?
Probably
That's the one that we were seeing, yeah.
Okay.
Side.
Building D, I believe.
Is that building D?
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, next page, please.
Sure. And then towards the back of the building, there's three that contain three-story units in the back facing the industrial. So the front still are that two-story and very in keeping with the, what we're calling townhome-style apartments. And then this is an attached community building.
Excuse me, Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
You're talking about building A, B, and C. You said they're facing the industrial?
Well, no, I'm sorry, the fronts of it are facing our community.
Yeah, that's what I, okay.
backs-
The back.
The back are three-story.
Gotcha, okay.
It slopes up to become three-story.
Okay, got it,
And-
thank you.
And you still enter from the front
Okay.
to that three-story portion.
So the only portion that's 3 stories is that portion that's closest to the industrial park?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Can you, using this image, give everyone just an idea of the exterior building materials that you're going to use?
Yeah, so we're looking at using lap siding and cultured stone at the base.
Okay.
And it goes up a story throughout the steel house.
Okay. There was a question, yes,
Are
ma'am?
all the buildings going to be the same identical color scheme, or there'll be differentiation between the buildings?
Yeah, we were gonna do the same color scheme throughout. It has two siding colors in the center.
The, Mr. Taylor's letter asks, and I think the chairman asked us to address this, asked us to identify the bedroom mix. In other words, how many one-bedroom, two-bedroom, and three-bedroom units do we propose?
So there's 72 total, 14 of them are one bedrooms, which is 19.4%. And then 43 two-bedroom apartments, which is 59.7%. And 15 three-bedrooms, which is 20.8%. And that's important because you need to be under 20% one-bedrooms, and you need to be over 20% two-bedrooms.
Right.
So this is meeting the UHAC requirements.
Right, that complies with the required bedroom mix for affordable housing.
Correct, correct, which is listed in your affordable standards as well.
Have you reviewed section 104-98 of the Hainesport ordinance?
Yes, I have.
Does your proposed architecture comply with the design standards in that section of the ordinance?
It does. We had buildings that had 20 units, we reduced those. None of the buildings are over 200 feet long, and meets all the requirements.
Great. Will all rooftop mechanicals, HVAC equipment, be screened?
The townhome style apartments, they'll be on the backs of the buildings.
Okay.
And they'll be mounted to the backs of the building.
Okay.
And then we will have a well here, so they'll be hidden in the roof for the garden apartments.
Okay.
I believe
So they
that
would-
was, we did the mini splits
Yes, correct,
on
correct.
the new buildings that were.
Okay.
Yeah, they're great, energy efficient, and you get multiple zones in there. It's a good system.
Can you go back to page 2, please?
Sure.
Or maybe it's page 1. There was a comment in Mr. Taylor's letter asking you to just explain,
This one?
yes, the left side of building D, which I think is shown on the left side of that page 1 of exhibit 2.
Yes.
Can you-
right over here.
Can you just explain the architectural detail on that elevation to address Mr. Taylor's comment?
Yeah, so we
And
have a.
Mike, is that also on the exhibit right below you at your feet?
This end right here?
Yes.
All right, well, maybe use that one, whatever one you think shows it better to explain it.
Yeah, maybe this one does, because the landscaping buffer is so, you know,
Right.
it shields some of the building, but this has every unit has a private balcony. So it has a private balcony, and then it has a smaller gable in there, and stone, and so it's it's a broken up scale. It's 2-story, I mean, it's 2.5-story, but it feels very low, minimally impact.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have for Mr. Donovan, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Mr. Donovan, you've got, what, 3 different styles of units? You got your 1-bedroom, your 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom.
Correct.
What's the square footage of each? Interior?
They need to be a minimum of 650, and they exceed those. I mean, the 1-bedroom, 650, the 2-bedroom, 850, and the 3-bedroom, 1150 per the affordable guidelines, and they all exceed that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to mention, they do have private balconies, they have 80-unit laundry, they have a big open concept plan. We have, Walters Group is committed to the environment and has, exceeds the insulation values that are required. So it's a very green product.
Are when you do metering for electricity and even water, how do you handle that?
We would have individual electric meter, and then the water would be paid by the owner. You know, that we don't have an individual.
All right, so the water's common and you take care of that with the rental fees,
Right.
but the homeowner has their own electric bill.
And gas.
And gas.
And gas, I guess shouldn't leave that out. Gas is serviced.
Yeah, I'm not even 100% sure if there's gonna be gas in this.
So it could be an all-electric.
Yeah, it could be an all-electric.
In your community room that you have here, is that second floor a usable one?
No, it's just a
It's just aesthetic?
Yeah.
Okay.
We create a volume there because it's like gathering space, so it has big high ceilings in there. So it feels like 2 stories, but it is.
So is this community center used for, obviously, the people that live at this community?
Yes.
Only, correct?
Yeah.
Is it, does it have like internet access for anybody that needs to go into and maybe use something like that? What is the purpose of this community room? Like, what do they offer in that?
There's a fitness center, a community lounge for gatherings,
Okay.
gathering space. The leasing office is there. There's a leasing suite for the full-time staff.
Okay.
To be there. Yeah, so I don't think you could rent out community space, but yeah, you could just use the community space.
So it's similar to the one at Davenport then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very similar.
Is it exactly like the one in Lumberton? Is that how it's set up?
Lumberton is free, I believe it was freestanding, right? But it's very, very similar,
Right,
yeah.
but I mean, all the units are similar to the
Yes,
ones
correct.
there with the self-closing drawers and the
Yes,
air
absolutely.
filtration system
Yeah,
and
yes. This townhome style is almost identical, you know,
so it's the same product that would be here.
yeah, we keep reinventing and developing, taking out any quirks or anything, but it is essentially a similar product.
Would we have to have that big red ugly thing that they have?
What was the big red ugly thing?
They have, when you pull in, there's this big red pipe with.
Oh, it might be a stamp pipe, I don't know.
Stamp,
Maybe.
might be the
Yeah, I don't
You
know.
get one of them?
I don't.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
The buildings E and F that go along Creek Road there, are they 2-story buildings or what's?
Yeah, they are this type of.
Just 2 stories?
Yeah, I mean, you could technically call it 2.5 stories because that under attic, but it really does look like 2 stories, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our architect, Mr. Donovan? Hearing none, I'll ask our traffic engineer, who's our final witness, to step forward. John McCormick. Thank you, Mike.
Counselor?
Yes.
I do have just one question for one of your professionals. Approximately, what's the best guesstimate of how many occupants will be in the 72 units? I know it's a guesstimate, but...
If anyone knows, it's probably Mr. Donovan.
No,
Or Mr. Spital, okay?
in a community like this, the average, I mean, you have the blend of 1, 2s, and 3s, but we average about 2.3 per unit when you kind of run it all together.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Del Duca, maybe before we get down the road on traffic with Mr. McCormick, I know that we specifically touched on a couple of the items in our report. Can you guys confirm that any of the other items are items that you will comply with?
Yeah, let me, thank you for that. Scott, I believe the answer is yes. Let me just check my copy very quickly. Yeah, the only other thing I would note is that comment E1 asked for a lighting design, and we have submitted that, so we've already addressed that, but.
We just said presented, and I think, because I know that you guys had. we
Presented.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we have no objection to the remainder of any of your comments. We just tried to address those that asked for testimony or clarification. So, no, we don't have any objection to your comments.
And the lights are all fully shielded, low glare, full cutoff, and 3,000 degrees Kelvin, correct?
Mr. Shula?
They will be, if they're not 3,000.
So, yeah. So the testimony was that we comply with all the applicable lighting standards if, is that correct, Mr. Shula?
Yeah, that standard or that request that was just made isn't a standard anywhere, it's what is usually desired, so we will comply if it's not already.
I believe it already
They are
does.
3,000.
Yeah.
So can I just slow us down so Mr. Kingsbury and I get that right? So what are we agreeing to do relating to the lighting?
Well, the lights are all right. I was just saying, we had a comment in about the lighting should be presented, and I was just asking you guys to confirm, which I already knew, that they are 3,000 degree Kelvins and full cutoff to minimize any glare off-site.
They are.
There you go. The lighting plan was now presented.
Thank you. Mr. McCormick?
May I have one question?
I think that's fine.
Number 8 on page 3 of 5, I think is important in regards to our office, which has enforcement issues. So it says the applicant should discuss resident limitations regarding the use of porches for storage, grilling, etc. What I'd like to find out is that the porches, as beautiful as they are, when your tenants move in, are there any type of paperwork or anything that discloses to them that, you know, they can't hang their laundry out there, or they can't have grilling, whatever the case may be?
Yes, that's a very good question, and that is something that we enforce. I'm not certain if it's in our lease. I believe it's in our lease, but it's something we're very cognizant of because this community needs to look like, you know, the first day it was built every day. And so we do, you know, we strongly limit that. We don't allow bicycles hanging on the porches or laundry and things like that.
Okay.
So yes, it's a good comment.
The reason I ask is because there's obviously several of us in our enforcement office that would appreciate that once this gets to that point, is to maybe have some documentation so that if there's something that has to be enforced, we know exactly what we are stating to the tenant or to the people on site. So if that could be sent to us or to Mr. Taylor, that would be helpful down the road in the future.
Sure, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Along the same lines, what will the tenants do with bicycles, for instance, which a lot of people have?
So it's a very good question, Mr. McCain. We talked about that during the initial concept phase and discussions, and there's bike racks provided throughout the site. We have one next to the tot lot, we have one between each of these buildings that are against the industrial park, we have one in an island that's against this building, and then another one on the other side of the tot lot for these front buildings.
So you've got approved places for storage?
Yes.
Yes.
As picking up on Mrs. Newcomb's question, TV, Wi-Fi, how is that? Is it underground wiring, or like they can't start putting the
Like satellite dishes?
satellite dishes and everything? How's that handled?
That's the least.
There are going to be a set of rules and regulations that apply to all tenants, and those will be incorporated into the lease.
Okay.
We'll provide a copy of those to Ms. Newcomb so that if it's violated, she'll know it. They're obviously going to, one of those rules are going to be they comply with all applicable township requirements. So if you adopt an ordinance that says you can't do something, then the tenants won't be allowed to violate it, just like any homeowner wouldn't be allowed to violate it.
Well, I guess the most offending item, what the chairman referred to, would be
Yeah.
satellite dishes.
Yeah.
Somebody moves in and wants to
Yeah.
stick a satellite dish on their porch.
Yeah, so I don't know if Hainesport has a prohibition against satellite dishes. If you don't, then this community should be treated the same. However, I don't know, you don't know what the policy is regarding satellite dishes?
Do we?
Yeah, so.
Legally, you can't.
Yeah, I don't.
Do we have an ordinance?
I understand your concern, it's an aesthetic concern. I don't want to just blanket agree to it, because I'm not sure that's an enforceable condition, but,
That's not mutual,
yeah, it's not.
because it's an FCC.
Right, that's what I'm thinking, so, I think we're going to have a general requirement that you comply with all applicable laws. I don't think there's anything specific about satellite dishes.
Did you also say that in the waste area, waste management area, recyclables will also be in that area? And how often will they be picked up? Like especially, will it be like daily pickup or?
Yes, recyclables will be there for the first part of the question, and the frequency of pickup will depend on the frequency of the need at the beginning of the job or when it's first occupied. They have a typical weekly pickup for everything, and if it demands more because this community recycles more than others, then it will be handled accordingly.
And in this case, I think Mr. Schuler talked about it, they'll use a compactor, which will help with the efficiency of the trash pickup, unlike many communities. It's all in one location so that that can be used. You won't have cans all over the community that are poorly maintained and an eyesore. It's all in one place, it's all enclosed. Everyone has to bring their trash to that location. That's the downside. If you live far away from it, you gotta walk or drive in your car. Most people drive. But it's a much better alternative from our client's perspective, and it's better for the town because it looks better, it's more efficient, and we can compact and recycle better.
They've done very well over Davenport, the village here. They really have. We've not had really any ever issues with
Yeah.
any of that over there.
And that is individual dumpsters.
Mhm.
So this will function better. It's a huge investment to have that centralized trash area. It's well beyond what anyone, anywhere does, and a substantial investment to make it work. So they've found a lot of success with it.
We have found out that through the many years is that the tenants that live in a lot of these places here also are very respectful due to the fact is that they don't want to put themselves in jeopardy either of doing anything wrong. So I have found through the years that the village, Davenport Village has done very well with trying to keep compliance with most everything that, Walters Groups in this case, or before it was the diocese, they tend to keep compliance.
So one of the things I'll mention, and I'll represent to the board, I'm an attorney, so I can't provide testimony, but Mr. Schuler can confirm this. The Walters Group runs a very tight ship. And one of the things that they do is they meet annually with police chief. You, Ms. Newcomb, will be invited to that. And we just meet with the town once a year, or more if needed. I don't think it'll be needed. Just to say, how are we doing? Do you have concerns? And that's part of they do that in every community, and that happens. And I think your township officials know that, you hear a lot of applications and you hear a lot of promises as a planning board, right? And sometimes those promises are fulfilled, many times they're not. So I can't promise you perfection, but I can promise you that this company has a very long record of very few complaints, and interaction with zoning, enforcement, police, to make sure if there are any issues, they're addressed as best we reasonably can. And I think that's important to mention.
What is the trash pickup? Is that going to be once a week? Or how do you?
It's as needed.
As needed? But not at 3 o'clock in the morning?
No, they come
What are the hours?
So, as you can imagine, be clear that everyone that lives here has a job and they work, so they're out most of the time during the day. Some will work night shift, obviously, but they do it during the hours when there's not as many residents on the site, usually during the day, during normal hours.
Okay.
So it's going to be no different than the trash truck running through the public sector, the rest of the municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, Mr. McCormick.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not. So we're going to try anyway. Why don't you start, Mr. McCormick, by just identifying yourself, telling everybody who you are.
Very good. Good evening, everyone. My name is John McCormick. I'm a partner with Dynamic Traffic. I am a New Jersey PE specializing in traffic engineering. I've been doing so for 30 years. I've been in front of, as Jay said, dozens, probably hundreds of boards, just like yours. I've also sat in Scott and Marty's chair as the township traffic consultant for various boards.
Mr. Chairman, we'd ask that the board accept Mr. McCormick as the next one in traffic.
Any questions from the board? If not,
Thank you,
Mr. McCormick's acceptable.
Mr. McCormick, did you prepare the traffic impact study dated December 22nd, 2023?
I did.
And was the primary purpose of that report to evaluate the potential traffic impact of this community on the surrounding roadway network?
That's correct.
And is it also correct that when you have a site plan that meets all ordinance requirements, that off-site traffic is not a legitimate basis for denying a site plan application?
That is correct.
Nonetheless, every town cares about traffic, and so we wanted to address that for the township of Hainesport, correct?
Nonetheless,
Can you
yes.
share your analysis with us?
Absolutely. I'll be brief. I'll provide a brief summary of the traffic study, and then obviously, as questions or anything comes up at the end, we'll go through that. What I'll talk about is the access, which Jay mentioned, excuse me, the existing traffic conditions surrounding the project, the traffic generation of this project. We analyzed the intersections, our driveway, the Mason Woods roads, and even the outer limits, meaning Warren and Hainesport or Mount Laurel. And then we'll talk about the parking. So just getting into it, I'll describe the access from a traffic engineering perspective. As Jay mentioned, it's a single driveway along Creek Road. There's a center median being provided that provides a nice safety barrier between entering and exiting traffic. And the driveway is located almost dead in the middle between the two Mason Woods roads. It's a great spot. It's offset from both of them almost identically, almost 300 feet. And most importantly, from my point of view, it's located at the crest of what's a slight hill in Creek Road. So the sight distance of the driveway to and from that driveway is very good because of that crest. We'll talk about the traffic volumes a little bit. We conducted traffic volume counts out here along Creek Road and at the 4 intersections, Marne, the 2 from Mason Woods, and then down at Hainesport, Mount Laurel. Basically, during the weekday morning and weekday evening, those are the peak hours that we analyze, industry standard analysis for a traffic study. So during those 2 peak hours, Creek Road has about 150 cars an hour going back and forth. In the morning, believe it or not, it's almost dead on 50-50, whether they're going north or south on Creek. In the evening, the 4:30 hour, if you will, it's about 60% coming southbound, but only about 150 cars in an hour. I'll just put that into perspective a little bit. Marne Highway has 1,200 cars an hour, and Hainesport Mount Laurel Road has 800 cars an hour. So just to kind of show you where Creek Road traffic volume, 150 cars an hour, slots in the neighborhood. We'll touch on the traffic generation of the project, right? We've talked about the 72 units. What you've probably heard traffic engineers say is they use a standard industry tool, the ITE trip generation manual, to estimate traffic for all kinds of projects, affordable apartments being one of them. When you look at the ITE guidelines and you look at the estimates for this project, during the weekday morning, it estimates 32 new trips. That includes 9 trips coming into the project and 23 trips exiting the project. Very similarly, in the weekday afternoon, you see 33 trips is the ITE estimate. 19 entering, return trip from work, and then 14 exiting as people come and go more often in the afternoon. So these 32 and 33 trips in an hour is relatively minimal. It is well below the industry threshold of 100 peak hour trips, which is a number that's used by DOT and numerous agencies throughout the state to identify a project that has a significant increase in traffic, or just identifies a threshold as to when a traffic analysis, should be conducted. So again, we're well below that. We did still conduct the traffic analysis, even with the 30-some-odd trips an hour, which is really only one car every few minutes coming or going. Just to put a little bit of perspective on that as well, Mason Woods across the street, it's about 32-some-odd single-family homes. When you look at the projections of that traffic, it's almost identical. It's like 26 trips in the morning, 34 trips in the evening. So it's really very similar, substantially similar level of activity coming off of the two sites across the road from each other. The intersection analysis, as we discussed earlier, even though it's really not required because we aren't as of right, we understand the importance of Creek Road and the concerns at least the one end, the Marne end. So when we conduct our traffic analysis, basically you come up with a level of service. Every intersection analysis identifies a level of service for the critical turning movements at an intersection. And a level of service similar to grading in a school is graded in A through F, A being the best and F being like a failure condition at a movement. So we'll start with Creek and Marne. So at Creek and Marne, all the levels of service are acceptable. Exiting Creek onto Marne is the most difficult move at that intersection, as you would imagine. However, none of the moves during the peak hours are level of service F. With the construction of this project and the additional traffic, albeit only a few trips in an hour, 30-some-odd trips an hour, this intersection maintains the exact same level of service as in the no-build condition. So the traffic generation from this project really has no perceptible impact at that intersection. Because we're splitting, some of our traffic goes north on Creek, some goes south, we're only adding about 13 trips is the estimate to that intersection. Then when you go back and you consider that Marne has 1,200 cars going up and down on an hourly basis, the 13 trips is about 1%. It's negligible. However, we understand the condition of the curve and the overpass, I'll call it, just before the intersection. Those conditions result in limited geometry, limited sight line. So we have in our report, we have a recommendation for a very simple signing and striping improvement that we think the town should consider. The county would have to approve it. That intersection is county jurisdiction. But it's a very simple signing and striping improvement. The signing would be basically some vertical clearance signs on the bridge. There's nothing on the bridge that says what the clearance is on the bridge. Object marker signs, which are little reflector signs on the sides of the bridge. Those are not there either. Turn warning signs out on Marne, just to give drivers an alert that when you make this turn, you're going to have to do it slowly, it's narrow, it's curving. So there's a few things that we think as far as signs that would provide a significant safety improvement. Additionally, there's some striping adjustments that we think could be made. Simple edge line stripes as we go through this curve. A center line extension, like the dotted center lines, if you've seen those before, that go through the underpass. Believe it or not, I know someone said that you can't get two cars through the underpass at one time. You can. You have to be going slow and you have to be cognizant of the situation. I think that marking this center line would give you an even split of the 20-foot wide opening that underpass provides. And then some additional word markings, just like we have the stop sign, a stop word marking, a slow, stop ahead. Things like that all add to driver awareness and are very simple to do. So we think those improvements, I think, should be considered in order to improve not only the existing condition, which could use that improvement, but also the condition when we have our residents down the road. I'll jump down to the bottom of Creek Road, Creek and Hainesport intersection. Again, all the movements at this intersection operate with acceptable levels of service. They are all level of service C or better. Again, they maintain the exact levels of service as the no-build condition, because remember, we're only putting about 19 trips down to that intersection in a peak hour. When you consider the 800 vehicles that are at that intersection, the Hainesport intersection, we're talking about adding 2 to 3% to that number, which is negligible. Probably most important is the intersections right around our development, the Mason Woods and the Weatherhill intersections. There is absolutely no change to the intersections because of this development. The levels of service there, as you would imagine, are levels of service A. They are excellent. There's, it's just the neighborhood traffic that comes through there. Remember, we're sending about 13 trips past Mason Woods, and we're sending about 19 trips past Weatherhill Court. That's about one car every 3 to 5 minutes during the peak hours. So that's just to give you an order of magnitude of the traffic impact on Creek Road. The site driveway, as you would imagine, operates excellent. Level service A and B. Remember, we have 30 some odd trips in a peak hour coming and going. There's only 150 cars on Creek Road up and down. The site driveway is going to operate efficiently. I'll touch on the safety of the site driveway. I started with where the driveway is located and the sight lines. That's how we gauge safety of an intersection primarily, is how well can the drivers see oncoming traffic. Because we're located at the top of the hill and because Creek Road is relatively straight, there's excellent sight lines in both directions. We typically go to the AASHTO site distance criteria. AASHTO is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. It is an industry standard guidebook for street design, intersection design. They set forth a design speed of 30 miles an hour for Creek Road, a little factor of safety on top of the 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. Basically, we're looking for about 300 feet of sight distance in each direction for drivers exiting our project. The sight lines in both directions far exceed the 300-foot requirement set forth by AASHTO. Looking to the left, you can see well beyond Weatherhill Court, and looking to the right, you can see well beyond Mason Woods Lane, which those each are about 300 feet from our driveway. And I'll touch briefly on the parking. Jay mentioned it. We're providing 122 parking spaces, 8 of which are EV, 6 of which are ADA. The AH1 zone requires 1.8 parking spaces per unit. At 72 units, it's 130 spaces required. As Jay mentioned, the state law requires EV spaces, but also in that requirement, it allows that the EV spaces, a credit can be taken against the requirement. So the 130 spaces are required. We have the 8 EV spaces. You can take that credit because they count as 2 spaces in the eyes of the state. So the requirement here is 122 spaces, and that is the parking supply that we provide. So we've satisfied the zoning requirement. Additionally, we looked at ITE as far as making sure our parking was satisfactory. ITE, just like they have a traffic generation manual, they have a parking generation manual. They estimate 1 space per unit, which would require 72 parking spaces for this project. We have 122. We think, honestly, I think the 1 space per unit is a little bit light. We have 122. And then also ITE recommends looking at other developments surrounding similar developments. We've worked with Walters for 13, 15 years now, maybe even longer. And we've looked at multiple developments of theirs. I specifically have numbers on the 4 in Ocean County, neighboring Ocean County. We count the parking at night. We actually go out there and count the number of cars. At night is when most people are home for the evening, and that's when the parking demand is highest. So we've counted those 4 sites. The average at those 4 sites is 1.4 cars per unit. That would equate to about 100 spaces at this project. Again, we're providing 122 spaces at this project. So we are very comfortable and very confident that the parking supply is adequate. Just a brief summary, the access. Our driveway is properly spaced between Mason Woods and Weatherhill. There's a center median to safely separate entering and exiting traffic. It operates with an excellent level of service as well as excellent sight lines. The traffic generation is minimal, one car every few minutes in and out, which is substantially similar to the level of activity you have coming off of Mason Woods. And the parking, as I just mentioned, we satisfy the AH1, we exceed the estimate from ITE, and we exceed the actual demands of similar Walters projects. That's a quick summary of traffic.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Any questions for Mr. McCormick?
Mr. McCormick, speed limit on Creek Road is 25 posted? Say it again. Speed limit on Creek Road is 25 as posted? Yes. And you're aware of the 2 speed bumps? Most definitely. And do you make any recommendation about those staying going, or more or less? The speed humps are probably the only thing that's going to keep traffic at a relatively traditional speed of 25 miles an hour. You can put all the signs, all the stripes you want. If you don't do something physical, like a speed hump, it's hard to control traffic speed. So I would recommend those stay. You endorse the speed bumps? In the right location, the right situation, I do. Are they on Creek Road? I would say they are. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McCormick? No, go ahead.
It's just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, please.
I'm referencing your January 5th,
Yeah.
2024 letter.
Yeah.
And let me preface it by saying you have probably forgotten most about traffic studies than I'll ever know in my lifetime. So, but I'm just curious about one small thing. If you turn to, I don't think the pages are numbered, but it would be the 3rd page in that letter that I just referenced.
Okay.
You talk about crash summary.
Sure.
And just not to drag the question out and everything, but you list everything, it's very clear. But then at the bottom of the first section, it says plus 8 more, then plus 2 more, plus 12 more. What's the number that I'm looking at?
All right.
How many, like?
Sure. The first 2 pages are mine.
Oh, okay.
3rd through 4th, 5th, that's the printout from the state police crash request.
Okay.
Okay, basically what that's saying, January 5th, we did a supplemental report on the crash evaluation at the intersection of Creek and Marne, okay? I'll go through the whole thing for you, as brief as I can. We looked at, initially, when this project started, was a couple of years ago, we looked at 10 years of crash data.
Understand.
Okay? Since then, the project came alive, here we are, we said, you know what, we better go get the most recent 3 years. So that's what this is. So we have 13 years of crash data from the state police at the intersection of Creek and Marne. There's a total of 44 crashes at that intersection over 13 years, which is only about 3 or so per year, which is way below the state average.
Aren't the 3 years included in the 10 years?
They are. The 3 in this January 5th
Yeah.
are included in the 10 that were in the original traffic study.
Yeah. So you don't add them, it's included, it's 10 years.
Yeah, no, it's 13 years, 44 crashes.
Okay.
So if you look at the first page, Mr. Chairman, I have 2 tables. The first says original evaluation 10 years.
Right.
And it totals 36.
Correct?
And then to the right of it is supplemental evaluation, 3 years.
I got
Totals
you.
8.
I got you.
So
Okay.
that's why. It's a supplemental
Okay.
report. So what I found was very interesting. You would think there was lots of vehicle crashes coming through this curve and under the underpass. 21 of them are fixed object crashes. It's people having a hard time negotiating coming through the curve and the underpass. So, you know, it's not that it's unsafe necessarily, because there's not a lot of crashes and there's very few vehicle crashes. The fact is that it's tight and it's a little bit uncommon. It's uncommon, to say the least. So that's why I came up with the recommendation of signing and striping, just to increase motorist awareness as they come through this. We all know everyone on Creek Road has the option to go around if they don't like going under the underpass, right? All the residents of Mason Woods, some of them go north, some of them go south. Our residents, the same thing. Some are going to go towards Marne, some aren't. So what we find is the intersections that the towns think are the worst intersections sometimes end up like this. They have the lowest crash frequency because people are paying attention when they drive through it. So that's what that's all trying to say in a nutshell.
is that I think with a few signing and striping, very cost-effective improvements out there, I think you could see a significant change and an improvement in the feel and the safety of that underpass.
The only follow-up question I have, Mr. McCormick, is that, did your report include an exhibit that shows the striping and signage and other improvements that you mentioned during your testimony?
It did. It's contained in Appendix E.
Of your December 22nd report?
That's right.
Yep.
So the applicant would agree as a condition of approval to, so long as the county approves it, install the improvements shown on Exhibit A of your report?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
They're described on page 9, and it's shown in Exhibit E.
Have you spoken to the county about that proposal?
Not yet, I don't think so, about those specific issues.
No, not about those.
Do you have any reason, based on your experience, to believe that the county would disagree with you on the need for those?
I do not. I do not. The ideas in that improvement are somewhat out there as far as signs and stripes and things, but I would say they're dated, and I would say it needs a freshening up. And I think this recommendation is that freshening up.
Will any of these recommendations require Conrail's approval?
No, no, everything is surface. They might want to be alerted to the fact we're putting a clearance sign on the bridge, but I'm shocked this clearance sign is not there to begin with. So it's nothing that is uncommon for any type of bridge underpass.
I was gonna say, with the clearance sign, you probably need an advance sign too.
There is an advance sign. Believe it, there's some on Marne, there's one on Creek, but there's nothing right at it, which is usually, you know, if you drive Creek enough, you don't notice the stuff on the side anymore. The signs kind of fade.
Right.
But every underpass I've seen, especially one that has this kind of vertical challenge, that clearance should be posted on it.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one, and this is a question, and I don't think I called it before, Mr. McCormick or Mr. Shulo. So you guys are providing 8 of the EV spaces, and I think the EV charging law requires that 15% of your required parking spaces, which is 130 spaces, have to be EV. So that comes out to 19.5 spaces, or rounds up to 20 under that law. So I think the project is actually required to have 20, and then there's a phasing schedule as set forth in that.
Yeah, the EV law says that the first third of the total have to be installed in the initial construction. We show more than that in this phase, in this initial construction.
Correct, but I think all 19 have to be shown, or 20
Well,
actually,
so, let me make
19.5
it
or
clear,
20.
so we show the actual charging stations. The law requires that it be made ready, meaning conduit. We don't
Correct.
put the chargers in, even for the
Correct.
full amount.
So, right, so none of those make-ready spaces are identified on the plan right now. You only have the 8 chargers shown.
We
So-
have, yeah, the other half isn't shown yet.
Right, so the other 2/3. So you'll have to show a total of 20 overall spaces. 8 will be make-ready, and then the balance phased in accordance with the law at 3 years and at 6 years, I believe it is.
Yes.
All right, so you
I
will,
want to make it clear, though, just so everybody understands how this will end up going. It means that only EV cars can park in those spaces. So the initial amount that we're going to propose is what's required by the law.
exactly what's required. So you'll show all 20. They'll be identified on the plans. You'll have conduit run to them, correct, which is consistent with the law.
Yes.
And then the actual charging stations will be implemented, 1/3 at CO, 1/3 at 3 years, 1/3 at 6 years, as required by law.
Yes, unless
Okay.
the rules change again, which they did just recently.
Okay.
But yes, whatever the current version of the law is, will comply.
May I
Can I
ask a
ask a
question in
Oh.
regards to the signage out front? Is that going to be lit? Has that been discussed, Mr. Taylor?
It is to be lit. It is to be lit, and we had asked them to clarify the lighting of that. I believe to make sure that it's 3,000 degree Kelvin to match the rest of the lights, and to make sure that it's shielded.
I just had a question. I was a little confused about that discussion on the EV spaces.
Sure.
The total number of parking spaces is going to be 122, but you said 20 of them, eventually 20 of them will need to be EV, and you said only cars that, or electric cars can park in those spaces, so that reduces the total number of available spaces for everybody else, right?
As a practical matter, yes, the law requires us to do what Mr. Taylor and Mr. Shulo just described, and we have to comply with that law, and we will. We'll show that detail on the plan with notes so that it's clear that we're going to comply. You're not supposed to park in an EV space if you have a gasoline-fueled vehicle. And if they don't have electric vehicles in this community, or as many, you may have EV spaces that aren't utilized, or people will park there even though they're not supposed to.
And I'm not enforcing that one.
But is the Walters Group going to enforce it?
Well, yeah, it's,
Although we're seeing a lot more EV cars now than ever. so
oh, yeah.
It may be,
And it wouldn't surprise me if that law evolved to meet the reality, whatever our future holds.
okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, everyone, that concludes our planned presentation. We don't have any other testimony. We'll certainly will answer any other questions. We would like the right to respond to any comments from the public if necessary, and wrap it up when we're finished, but that's all of our planned presentation. So thank you for your indulgence.
It was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I'm going to address your last comment about you want to engage in comments from the public. That's not happening.
No, I'd like to have a right to respond if necessary.
But I'm going to control how it's, I don't want to get into debates, okay, with the public.
Understood.
I'm going to allow them to speak and raise questions, comments rather, but we'll cover that when we get there, okay? I think you'll be happy with it.
You got it.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board members to any of the presenters?
Yes, I have a question, and I just think for the good of the group, if we can talk about the anticipated number of children that are going to potentially, or are expected to result from this, and address any concerns with school capacity, any impact with school capacity.
Yep, that's a very good question. We face it often. So we conduct our own numbers of school-age children in all of our communities. There are also publications out there. Rutgers publishes a study every so many years. Our internal number of school-age children per unit is about 0.67.
What was that, the answer?
It averaged out to 0.67 school-age children per unit. That is consistent with the Rutgers data, and when you multiply that out, it gets you, I believe the number, so you multiply it by the 72 units, divide it by the 13 school grades, and I believe it's, somewhere around 3.5 children per grade. That's the average.
So about 50 new children, 52?
That sounds right.
Do you know what the average is for a single-family home, 4 bedrooms?
In terms of,
Children.
In terms of children, it's far more than that. Single-family homes have way more children than apartments, and then a subset of that's affordable apartments.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions from the board? Professionals? Mrs. Newcomb? No. Mr. Taylor?
No, sir.
Mr. Martin? No. Okay. Okay, I'm going to now open this to public comment. And we still have 5 people online, you said?
There's 2,
Okay.
and actually my calculation is 48.
Okay, I emphasize this all the time, so I'm not being inconsistent with saying it. This is public comment, not question and answer period. So phrase your comment. If you want some kind of an answer, we'll try to address it for you. But what I don't want is I don't want debates between the applicant and the public. address your comments up here, and I will control it, and if I see one of the applicants, one of them are nodding, if they have the answer, I'll ask them to answer or address the comment. But please speak to us this way. You'll be asked to come forward when you're acknowledged and step up to the podium. Mr. Kingsbury will swear you in, and then you can make your comment. So, public comment is open. Do we have someone? I know this lady in the front, you had a question earlier. Okay. Yes, sir, in the back, gentlemen.
My name's Mike Dutcher. I live 106 Mason's Woods, which actually backs up to this driveway that's going in.
I have to swear you in, just a second.
Okay, good.
It's Mike,
Yep, Dutcher, D-U-T-C-H-E-R.
say it again.
D-U-T-C-H-E-R.
Raise your right hand, please. Swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do. The first question I got is, living in Mason Woods, our buffer zone is 50 feet. Why is this one only 42 feet? Shouldn't it be 8 more feet for this buffer zone? We live directly across the street from it. So that
Okay,
was,
just to rephrase it, I understand what you're asking, but you said it's public comment, not question and answer, but we're going to get the answer to your concern.
okay.
Mr. Taylor?
So, as indicated by the applicant's testimony, the zoning was specifically modified for this site to help the town meet its court-mandated and constitutional affordable housing obligation. That's what mandated some of the changes in zoning in terms of the permitted uses and also some of the bulk standards.
8 feet bulk zone was
So-
given up?
Sorry.
8 foot was given up just for them to build?
So the buffers, the setbacks, the types of units at this were modified so that the township could meet its court-mandated affordable housing obligation. The buffers was one of those that was modified.
Okay, second question was, you talked about public transportation. What is the law, our lawyer over here, what is the law? Do they have to have public transportation for low income and affordable housing?
Okay, first of all, our lawyer is Mr. Kingsbury.
Okay,
It's recommended, I'm not sure it's mandated.
well, shouldn't we find this out before we move forward?
Well, they have to comply if that's a requirement.
I'm asking, what is the requirement? I'm not a lawyer, so I'm asking, what is the requirement from the state for somebody who doesn't have transportation that is low income, that does nowhere near a bus stop? How are we gonna get this low income people up to the bus stop, which is over a mile away on Route 38?
Were you listening to the testimony?
I listened to everything you had to say today.
Okay.
And also, I heard no comment, I heard around it, but I never heard a definite answer, is, do they need it? And I guess with
think
our
if you
attorney
listen-
tonight.
If you listened to the testimony,
Mhm.
you would have heard the experts say that in their experience, in these types of developments, which they are well experienced in many areas of the state, that the vast majority, if not all residents, have their own vehicles and do not rely on public transportation.
Again, is it mandatory by law to have it since you're building affordable housing? That is my question.
Mr.
Again,
Mr. Chairman, I can say in.
I was going to ask Mr. Del Duca if he knew.
Yeah, the answer is no.
Thank you.
Thought our township lawyer would know this, so that's why I looked at you, because I'm not allowed to address them, you said, right?
What's that?
I'm not allowed to address them, right? Because you told me to
Correct.
address you.
No, thank you.
I guess I got a couple more, I guess, is the pilot program for this place. How long does that last where they don't have to pay any taxes? Is this a lifetime where the school children don't have to pay taxes to the school board and everything? Is it a 5-year, 10-year pilot program for them, or is this a lifetime where nobody ever pays taxes to this township?
Mr. Del Duca, I'm going to ask you to respond to that if you can.
So, we're here for site plan approval, so that's not an issue that relates to site plan approval. However, I do know, although I did not negotiate a financial agreement between the developer and the municipality that's required for all communities such as this. It does provide for a payment in lieu of taxes, which again is required in order to make these communities work, and they pay a percentage of their rents, I believe it's about 6.28%, if I'm not mistaken, towards of the gross rents payable to the applicant, in lieu of paying taxes on the improvements. And that is the pilot that I've seen in every one of these communities I've gotten approved, of which there have been many. So, I don't negotiate them, that's what I know.
So no answer.
You may not like the answer.
Well, it might be forever, right?
No. So, I'm
So
sorry.
do we have some?
Let me just finish.
Paul would know.
Well, let me just answer the question, okay? I've been asked to answer it. So this property will be deed restricted initially, I believe, for 30 years, and that will likely be renewed. The initial pilot, I believe, matches the duration of the deed restriction.
That is
It's
correct.
30 years, to answer your question.
Okay, it's 30 years without no taxes coming in from this.
Again, you may not like the answer, sir,
But
but there
that's-
will be
that's
taxes
the
coming
point.
in. There will be taxes coming in. It won't be ordinary taxes. They're not gonna pay the same thing that you or I pay as an ordinary taxpayer, but there will be tax revenues paid. They're called payment in lieu of taxes. That's on the improvements.
Okay.
And the land tax is always paid.
I just got two more things. The one thing you said about traffic control, traffic plan that this gentleman did back here. Well, Paula knows this firsthand because I'm the one who went into the building. They were installed on a Sunday morning at about 10:30, 11 o'clock. There was 4 cameras installed on Creek Road. One at the intersection on Hainesport and Creek Road, one underneath the traffic bridge, one right across the street from us, from both ends of our development. I went in to see Paul at 9:30 in the morning on Monday morning. They were taken down by 1. What kind of traffic study was this done? Did they do it by satellite, or do we do it on a Sunday night into a Monday morning? Because there was never another camera ever installed there, and Paula knows this because I was in the office talking to you about it. You called the developer, got back to me, and said they were all taken down by 1 o'clock on a Monday. So moving forward, I think we should do a real traffic study, an independent one, okay, not from the builder, from an independent. Have the builder pay for an independent or us as a township to really see what the real numbers are. Because what he just said isn't true and isn't fact, and Paula knows it. So I'll let him, I don't know who wants to comment on that.
I have a comment on that. If the township deems this zoning appropriate, which they have, you can't say, no, we're not going to approve it because we don't like the traffic it's going to generate. That's not a valid reason for turning it down. Now, they hired an engineer to do a traffic study. I can't challenge his findings, other than to say it's not a necessary part of the site plan application. It's something that they did, I don't want to say gratis, because I'm sure it wasn't done gratis, but it's not an element of the approval, because the township has deemed this property appropriate for this particular use.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kingsbury. Mr. McCormick, may I ask you, can you just tell us when the traffic study was conducted, during what hours and what days of the week?
The traffic counts at the intersection were conducted on Tuesday, the 14th of November. We put down an ATR machine, which is it's like a rubber tube machine. I think my sub-consultant used that in this case. And that was down from probably Sunday through Friday to get the whole week.
So it was for a week?
Yeah, that too.
Okay, now what was, you use cameras also, or just the rubber tubing?
Well, for the intersection counts, sometimes they use cameras, sometimes they put someone in a car and they actually count it by hand like we used to do back in the day.
Right.
So I'm not sure what they did, but I have the results from our sub-consultant here, and there's nothing that indicates that this is not factual, what they gave.
Well, what's factual is I went and seen Paula on Monday morning when they were installed Sunday morning at 11.
A lot of times.
I was there at 9:30 in the morning. I talked to the guy personally. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm doing a traffic study. Okay, no problem. I let it go, went there to her office first thing, 9:30 in the morning. By 1 o'clock, they were dismissed.
I don't know who you talked to, or I don't know what you saw exactly, or when that was.
Okay.
But I can tell you that our sub-consultant is Imperial Traffic Control. They are a well-known, well-respected traffic
collection firm, and I agree with what they said. So
All
I
right.
can't tell you, I don't know what you saw.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. And thank you for the comment. And then we got some more information.
Yeah, I just, Paula knows because I was in her office. Third thing I got, or last thing I got for tonight is the wetlands buffer. Could that be reduced to make more units? Instead of making them 3 stories, can we make them 2? Okay, this is, I know nobody lives with this, and you guys are going to drive by it, going underneath this bridge and everything. But we can make these units 2 units, 2-story units instead of the 3-story unit. Maybe, just maybe, we could take out like the wetlands buffer, maybe we could reduce that to make more units at the back. Maybe take the retention pond 1 in the front, combine it with the retention pond in the back. Maybe reduce something back there so we could put more units on the back corner, just so we can make these all 2 units going across. I mean, if we're gonna, we start off with 66, we're up to 72 units in this, but maybe we could stretch this out a little bit longer, so we got more units, which would be, you're trying not to devalue our properties across the street. I mean, that's the name of the goal here, right? Yes, we gotta put this somewhere, it's gotta be in our backyard, I get it, okay? Let's work with us over here. I think a lot of us is, instead of making these 3-story buildings, let's make them 2-story buildings.
They're not all 3.
You got the whole back row. I'm gonna be looking right at it every day. I get it. Okay, this is a piece of ground. Do I think it was ideal? Listen, I'm not saying anything about these people because I think they built a nice project. I know what they built up in Lumberton. I see what they built in Delanco. They always build it on a roadway. If you guys ever notice what they're doing, they did it in Morristown. They did it across from Costco. They did it on Warren Highway, Mount Laurel did, okay? Lumberton does it right next to Walmart, okay? They put it all near where public transportation is. They don't put it on a side street where there's no public transportation, nobody get in and out. It's a fact.
Mr.
Not saying
Taylor-
this guy doesn't build a good thing.
Mr. Taylor, can you explain why the wetlands can't be used to put buildings up?
Well, we weren't involved in the permitting on this. I'd asked Mr. Shulo to get involved. But just in looking at the plan, pretty much every square inch of the site that is developed that can be sort of functionally. I defer to the engineers, but I think that other.
I mean, this
basin
plan
is-
has changed. Got it?
Wait, let him finish.
Okay.
I don't believe that basin can be relocated to the back either based on the current stormwater management regulations, but I would defer to the engineers on that. Maybe Mr. Shulo or Mr. Del Duca can comment as to whether or not additional land area can be sought.
Sure, Mr. Shulo? Try to understand the question.
So the question is, can we spread the buildings out by
Yeah,
reducing
that
the
part I
buffer?
got. That part I got. So the short answer is no.
I'm saying, reduce this one here, combine it with that one, maybe take this buffer back, maybe add a little buffer back here, so we can make these instead of 3.
Point something out that's really good that I'm glad you bring it up. So one of the constraints we have on the site, aside from the natural wetland that are in this corner here, is the developer for the industrial park encroached into the project site here, and that's their stormwater feature, that we can't use that area because they've encroached. So there's an easement agreement that we're required to
So we can't
provide.
do this little corner here, this is the easement right here, right? The
Yeah,
permit.
well,
Why can't
that's,
we do this
that's,
little corner
that's
here,
the
and
wet,
maybe put a couple more houses right here?
that's the wetland right there, and then that edge there, where that's their fence, that's where it slopes up. So their basin's 6 or 7 feet deep, so that's the graded edge. So we can't utilize any of that part. And this over here, even though, aside from the buffer, I mentioned in earlier testimony that it's pretty steep in here, there's a lot of land grading already taking place. You've seen it, you see across
I
the
live
street.
right across the street. This
So
is
you
my house
know
right here.
how much grade change there is. This is significantly lower than a lot of this part, so we can't make it drain uphill to get to this basin. So
So
this,
originally, when we got this plan, should I address you guys or him? 'Cause I don't know.
Now, just-
But originally, when we got this, it was a year ago, year and a half ago, this was the driveway original. It was supposed to go from right across the street from here to here, but now it's in the middle of the block. But the original plan was, from the beginning, was right across here. So now you switched everything one time.
I think also because all of the buildings were 3-story, and as a compromise,
No, I'm just saying.
They-
it's changed
that's-
one
that's
time.
probably
Why
the
can't we
driver.
Compromise a little bit more,
But-
see if we can squeeze something more out of this.
right,
And make it to, I'll get back over here. We got 72 homes going here, right? And throughout our story here in Hainesport, I've been here over 25 years, okay? We've taken everybody's money from all these builders, and now we're at the point where, okay, we got to build this affordable housing. Do I think there's other good places in town to put it? Yeah, I do. Nobody ever wants it, but somebody's got to be bothered by it. But just work with us over here in this development. That's all we're asking. Make it, I know he builds a nice thing, okay, I know that. Let's try to knock this down like Davenport, or, you know, you've been over Davenport a lot. Let's make them all 2 stories in there for us. So maybe, yeah, maybe we might be 8 short, but we can put that 8 somewhere else in town. We don't have to have all 72 units because everybody else in town decided to build or give us money. And all we're asking you to do up here as a board, work with us. Yeah, we understand you guys all want to put it there. We all know it's going to get approved, okay? But just work with us, with this planning board, with this, to make it nice, so when we look across the street every day, that you build a good project for us all. That's all we're asking, and that's all I got for tonight.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anybody online have any
There are 2 residents online.
They have any?
If they
Comment?
could, they could unmute and provide their comments.
Okay, I'll take one more from here. Ma'am?
No one's unmuting.
Could you
Name,
be
please.
sworn in by Mr. Kingsbury?
Janice Ludden, L-U-D-D-E-N.
Janice,
Ludden, L-U-D-D-E-N. Like Sudden with an L.
raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
So I'm on the Environmental Commission, so a lot of my comments, questions, but they're to do with the environment thing. So I just wasn't sure if we have exactly what the list of proposed plants and trees that are being put in. I didn't see that on the thing that I was able to look at as far as what they are, the specific bushes. They're probably available.
Isn't there a planning schedule?
There is a planning schedule, Mr. Chairman. If you want, I can read off a.
Yes, please.
So Janice, their landscape architect, we've done numerous projects with them. They do actually focus quite a bit on trying to maximize the use of natives.
Okay.
We went through, and none of the species that we saw there are no invasive species identified on here, and they really do try to maximize the number of those, even to the point where they have, you know, summer sweet, Fothergilla, Ilex inkberry, winterberry, Virginia sweet spire, a number of these that are native shrubs.
Yeah, I just didn't see that. Also, it was mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of trees on that site that are coming down, obviously. It's a wooded lot. And, you know, unfortunately with carbon and all, trees are a very good source of carbon stock. But I wasn't sure, they mentioned seedlings going someplace, but there was also mentioned there wasn't room for trees at that site. Where are the seedlings going to be planted, the 300 seeds?
So one of the things we talked about is some of the transitional rear grading on the back sides of basins and things. We've had success doing that. A lot of times what we'll do is a strip of meadow planting, and then doing a number of seedlings in there. There will be some mortality with those deer browse, and just general mortality. But I think the totals were about 315 trees. And those can be put into a tighter spot. If you plant all 2.5-inch caliper trees, they take up a considerable amount of space very early on.
Okay, is there any possibility of some of those trees going someplace else where there is some space as opposed to the mortality of saplings?
So there's some case law about that, and it becomes difficult. So it's probably easier if we handle that as opposed to an off-site contribution for off-site planting. So if we do that on-site, it'll actually, long-term, establish some better edge habitat here on this site, which is a spot that could use it, especially around where some of that transitional grading is for the basin.
Okay. And then the basin, is it going to be a mowed basin? Or is it going to have?
Mr. Shule. So I mentioned that what's shown in the mustard color is sand in the bottom of the basin that's required by state law. So that area won't be mowed. It'll be tilled once in a while for crop lines and I think everything that's shown in the lighter green will be around the edge of the basin. That will be moved. Or the bottom of the basin won't be moved. It's just gonna be the slope.
And then the other one, the traffic study, this is not the environmental commission, this is just me, but listening to the traffic study, I think that numbers aren't as important, like 30 cars added and the intersection, as so much as percentage increase, which wasn't really dealt with. So like if I live in a house and I have 4 people in there and 4 relatives come to visit, I'm doubling. It's only 4 people, you could say, but it's doubling the amount of people. So I just felt like that was sort of, saying, yeah, there's just 30 more people, and how long do people have to wait to get out there, and how much is it increasing the percentage chance of the accidents that might happen there, which I would think would be an important part of the traffic study. And the other question was just curiosity, probably, but when I was looking at the Lumberton numbers for the income requirements for the units, some of them have a very small range of how much income. So like your minimum is like $21,400. Your maximum is $23,400, which is like $2,000. I was just curious as to, one, how much turnover there is in these units. Like, do people live there for 1 year? Do they live there for multiple years? Like, kids going to school is going to be just there for 1 year and then moving. And then the other thing was just, do the units ever end up being empty because nobody's making between $21,300 and so just more curious than anything. So, I don't know if
Okay.
That was
Mrs. Ludden, while you're waiting for that answer to come, here's a copy for you of the planning schedule for the Environmental Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
And just, Ms. Lyden, just one thing to follow up. That whole rear perimeter of the basin is actually shown as a conservation seed mix.
Okay.
That is sort of a meadow that has a lot of native plants and will sort of naturalize back for that whole rear area.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Kingsbury will swear you in. State your name and address, please.
Mary Ellen Martin, 111 Weatherhill Court.
Say it again.
Hainesport. Mary Ellen,
Gail?
Mary Ellen Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N. 111 Weatherhill.
You swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but truth, sir?
I do. I know you said you didn't want questions, so just a quick comment. It's been mentioned quite a few times as we come to these meetings, and I've been to most of them when it comes to this particular subject. And you always say, come share your comments, which I think most of the people in our development have shared the same comment. Our main concern is the traffic and the excessive speeds that go up and down Creek Road. With this development, it will bring additional cars, more volume, more speed, and it's very concerning to us, I know that. In all the testimony today, I didn't hear anything that's addressing the speed in the sense of, are we putting more speed bumps in? We have no police in this town, so how is it going to be policed so that it's a little bit safer on Creek Road, number one? We all know that Railroad Trestle Bridge is extremely dangerous. I don't see having more cars coming in and out as it getting any better. I now personally go around because people just don't know how to negotiate it sometimes, and I don't want to be caught in that situation. We talked about the speed bumps. I'm just a little concerned about all of those things with this new development coming in, with the additional people. And I guess I do have one small question. You have 122 parking spaces. If someone has a party, where are these additional cars parking? I'm just curious. There's no parking on Creek Road.
Right.
Are they coming to the streets into the development, which is fine. I understand that as long as it doesn't become the routine. So
Well, part of your comment was a good one, but I think you were here, but I'm not positive if you were. But Mr. McKay raised some questions of Mr. McCormick, the traffic study professional.
Right.
About should we have more speed bumps in there? What is the posted speed limit? It's 25. I know where you're coming from. 25 means 35, if I'm wrong.
Correct. There isn't anyone going that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. But there's not much we can do, we, meaning
I
here,
understand.
can do about it.
I understand.
But your point's noted, and we appreciate it. And I hope I've partially answered. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not stupid. I know this is pretty much a done deal. We got that. I just feel as if we as citizens and residents here in this township need to kind of get that out so that it is, noticed so that, we are concerned about that. Those are issues that do concern us. So, thank you all.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is a ma'am, okay. Any comments from folks online? Anything, anybody wake up yet? No? Okay.
If there's anybody online?
Okay, Mr. Kingsbury will swear you in, please.
Your name,
Pat Mackin, 116 Mason Woods Lane, Hainesport, New Jersey.
your name again?
Pat Mackin, M-A-C-K-E-N.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tonight I heard a couple things that, from being on the board in Mason's Woods that I thought were, one, just dangerous, that I thought needs to be addressed. And one is, if I heard correctly, no fencing around the basin. In our basin, we just redid all that fencing a couple of years ago. And on advice of our lawyer, we had to post signs to keep out. Now, no toddler's going to understand what that is. But that was based on a lawsuit that was just settled the end of last year, where a toddler came out of the trailer park up by the Vincenttown Diner, went into that retention pond and drowned. So when I heard no fencing, I thought there's kids that are going to be in this development. And our basin, when I've come up and looked at it, the water flow chart that our basin's only supposed to have this much water, it's up to here on me because the 3-inch pipe coming into that basin is going out of the basin is clogged. I can't get into it. We climb over the outlet with a rake to try to unblock that. If that happened in this basin and that's not fenced and you have a toddler go in there, you've got a lawsuit, I would think. I don't want to see any child killed because there's no fencing around the basin. And ours wasn't supposed to have water in it, and it does.
Yeah, well, and the testimony we received earlier is that it's only going to be about 2 feet.
So was ours.
Yeah.
And I've been up there and it's this deep. And when you have torrential rain, ours, in my opinion, after taking care of it for so many years, it's not constructed right because it does not flow correctly unless we go down there and unclog that little pipe. So that was one.
Okay, good comment.
Well, I don't want to see anybody lose a child. My other question is, that basin, I understand sand bottom, where does the water go? Is there a pipe connecting it to the pipe underneath Creek Road to the creek?
We'll get a response for you, okay?
Only because one of our residents has crawled through that pipe to unclog it. We do a lot of maintenance in our little development.
That's the most important part of all the stormwater management systems is the maintenance. That's the reason
Right.
that they fail, is people don't maintain them. There's a little bit of issue with construction sometimes. On days like this, when it's under construction, things can get clogged up. But generally, first, Walters maintains all their properties and has since they built them. They don't sell anything. They build it, they maintain it, they operate it. They do multitude of stormwater management, inspection, maintenance, and it's inspection and monitoring to prevent the issues you're talking about. But the outfall, the question you asked, there's an outlet structure that's an inlet box, generally a concrete box, and has a pipe that comes out and goes into this wooded area over here and discharges below grade so that there's a positive relief in the basin.
Okay.
There's a requirement for a shallow portion of the basin to be stored because we have to meet a more poly standard mandated by the state, but it's insignificant compared to like the net you're talking about.
Okay, so on this, let's see, here's the road, right here's the pipe.
Yeah.
That goes underneath here.
Comes right in through here, you can
Yep.
actually see part of it right there.
Oh, there's the pipe, right. And that's the one that one of our neighbors had gone in to keep clean. So my question was, any of that water from either one of those have a chance of going in?
Well, so to be clear, what happens today is it drains, this site drains to that location already.
Right, it does.
So it does.
That's what the pipe is.
And the way these stormwater management rules are designed, we have an improvement to the flow that goes to that pipe in the proposed condition. We have to reduce the amount of flow that goes to that pipe.
Okay.
So this will be an improvement to what you see today.
Okay, so I guess you'll be maintaining that pipe?
No, ma'am, it's a township property, we're not allowed to.
Okay. Your responsibility.
Now, sir,
I'll tell our residents, stay out of it.
excuse me, let me just, didn't you mention in previous testimony that there was going to be an overflow pipe in the back of that drain thing running?
Our basin, yeah, I just mentioned that again, there's a structure that's here and there's a pipe that discharges into the woods upslope of that pipe that was mentioned.
Okay, but
Unless
I
it's
thought
on
you
their
said something in the back corner was going to go up the other way, towards the industrial park and then into a pipe.
I
think it goes under the
HOA
We're laying
property.
an opening in the wall of the basin so that any
can't see
excess
it,
flows
but
beyond
you
what
can see it up
the system is designed to incorporate, which is not really supposed to happen.
Okay.
Would go that way.
All right,
And that's what we have in ours.
Yeah, all
That
of
gets clogged up
Right.
here. Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, I guess the last one, well, two. Where are these being marketed to? Davenport was marketed up in New York and over in Philly. So where are ours going to be marketed to?
Don't know, wherever the developer is going to do it.
Yeah, we, I mean, I think
This is Mr. Spital, go ahead.
yes. So our affirmative housing fair marketing plan spells that out, but, you know, newspaper publications locally, I'm sure up in Trenton and through NJM, HMFA, but again, we can't favor people in a specific town or exclude people in another town, but.
And there are certain required outlets that we have to follow so that the word gets out.
Okay, because at Davenport, the Camden Diocese were the ones running the ads up in New York. That's why I just wondered where it was.
That was a diocesan community.
Right, no, I don't think it is now. Anyway, thank you. The last question, or just comment, I back up Mike Dutcher 1,000,000%, because I talked to the gentleman putting those cameras up, all 4 were put up. They were down exactly when Mike said. I posted it on Facebook, how quick they came down. They were supposed to be, from what the gentleman told me, up there for a month. I thought, good, you're capturing all of the traffic. They go down, I think they put, we asked for strips, no strips were put up. That's an inaccurate traffic study. Absolutely 100%. I'd like to see it redone. We have 32 homes. I can't tell you how many vehicles go in and out of that development every day. And I know you said it doesn't matter. It would be nice that's accurate for the record.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mackin. Any other public comment? Any public comment from online?
There are 3 individuals online. If anyone has a public comment, please unmute yourself and provide your comment. No?
Okay, hearing no more, we'll close public comment. Mr. Del Duca, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, the hour is late, and I'm sure everyone wants to get on with it, so I'll just keep this brief. Just to refocus where we began, this is a site plan application. The question before this board is whether we meet your applicable requirements. You, as a board, have to consider the evidence that's in the record, which is the testimony that's given, that you find to be credible, and the evidence here, of course, is that we meet all the requirements. Your professionals have looked at this with a fine-tooth comb, and we meet your requirements. So as a result, site plan approval has to be granted. Timing is important. One thing I didn't mention, this community will be financed primarily through what's called an Affordable Housing Production Fund, which is a pool of money, $305 million set aside by the state to fund affordable housing communities throughout the state. And it's essentially a first-come, first-served basis if you meet the requirements. So this community has received what's called a declaration of intent, which is essentially like a preliminary indication of approval, but it's not a guarantee and it's not a final approval. In order to get the final approval, what they call, I believe it's called the resubmission. Is that right, Ed? Resubmission? Recommitment. I knew it wasn't exactly right. The recommitment, we have to have preliminary and final site plan approval. So we need that from you tonight because we need to submit that to HMFA to show them that we have that. We will ask them to put us on their next available agenda. Best case, that's May 9th. We may not make that agenda, in which case, if it can occur, I believe, 45 days later, which would be roughly late June. There's no guarantee that this money will be available when we go back to HMFA. That's just something none of us, any of us in this room, control. That's not intended to be anything other than just an indication of what the reality is for the funding of this community. So the timing is important. So we put a lot of time and effort into trying to make sure we get this right, comply with all of your applicable rules, and you have a robust set of rules, and we comply with them. We've worked with your professionals. We're grateful for their input. Your township officials have provided a lot of input. We've tried to address your comments as best we can. I'd be lying if I said we could address everyone's comments. We can't. This is a site that's constrained by wetlands. Hainesport Township, the Walters Group doesn't dictate where we can put everything because of the wetlands. This is the site that we have, and so we're utilizing every bit of this site that we can. We've tried to reduce the stories in the front to lower the impact, lessen the impact of the residents across Creek Road, put the height back by the industrial park where we'll have no impact. We think we've hidden that height with the architecture of the buildings and the screening. So we've tried to do everything we can to make this a responsible development. It's not a popularity contest. The question before this board is, do we meet the site plan requirements? The answer unequivocally is absolutely yes. And as a result, we ask you to do what the law requires and approve this site plan approval so that we can move to the next step, which is complying with all your conditions of approval, finalizing the financing, and helping to meet the township's affordable housing obligations.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate your comment. Board members, any other questions? Professionals?
I have a question,
Okay.
just for the record. If you made these two-story buildings and you took the top ones off, how many units would we lose?
So if we took off the third story in the back of the rear buildings, Mr. Donovan, can you estimate that approximate? And you'll have to step to the microphone. And you don't need an exact number, right?
I know we're under pressure that we have to supply so many units, but I'm also I understand that many residents have expressed this to me,
Yeah.
and I want to put their concerns on the record.
About 10 to 12 units.
It's a lot of units.
Mr. Del Duca, what is the impact on the financing if you reduce the number of units?
Well, you have a court-approved settlement agreement that specifically provides for 72 units on this site.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Period. And if you wanted to deviate from that, you'd have to make up the units, get fair shares approval, get the court's approval. You have an agreement with us which contemplates 72 units, and you've agreed to fund 72 units, 6 more than the original 66. So that would be, to me, a back to the drawing board type of change. And that would significantly endanger the funding because this production fund is not going to last indefinitely. The well will run out.
What was the prior testimony? How many three-bedroom units? Was it 10?
So you cannot have, you have to have at least 20% of the units three-bedroom. And I'll tell you what the testimony was, but I wrote it down, excuse me. We'll have 15 three-bedroom units.
Okay.
So we meet the three-bedroom requirements. The state wants 3 bedrooms, so you have to have at least 20%, and 15 meets that requirement.
Okay. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thank you, unfortunately.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from our professionals?
No questions.
No, sir.
No? Mrs. Newcomb? No? Okay, so what's the board's pleasure on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to grant both preliminary and final site plan approval as requested by the applicant.
Okay, I'll second that. Any questions on the motion? I have one of Mr. Kingsbury. Do you need any clarification as to, for the resolution?
The only waivers that we discussed were for the tree count, and that Mr. Taylor and Mr. Miller would walk the site to determine tree plantings. And they're going to comply with all the other requirements that are in the review letters.
And keep Mr. Taylor and Mr. Miller happy, right?
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that. We're going to comply with the remaining comments in the letter, except as testified by Mr. Shulo in his testimony as to a handful of comments, which were really clarifications, but yes.
Okay. Okay,
I had a couple other conditions, just because I suspect the board will expect them since they were discussed. In addition to the walking the site regarding the trees, we'll look at turning the fence around the corner on, I'll call it the right side as you face it from Creek Road. I think that's the southeast side, but I'm not sure about directionally. We'll address the fire officials' report dated February 28th and come back to the board if we can't resolve that comment in there. We've addressed the lighting concerns that Mr. Taylor mentioned. We'll provide a copy of the rules and regulations to Ms. Newcomb, and anyone else he asks us to provide them to. We're going to install the improvements to Creek Road near the intersection as depicted on Exhibit E to the December 22nd traffic impact study if the county approves it. And lastly, we're going to revise the plans to show the location of all EV spaces, those make-ready and future potential spaces as required by law, with notes as to when they'll be installed based on existing law, but that's subject to change. And that's all the conditions I noted.
okay. What about the striping, Mr. McCormick's?
That was included in my comment,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman. Excuse me, the improvements as shown in that exhibit. So it's striping, some signage, clearance, all the things that were testified to, and they're shown on Exhibit E to the December 22nd report. So that's a good reference.
Okay. All right. May I have a roll call, please, on the motion?
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Krollpfeifer?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
For me, this was a very difficult application, and it was presented, you did an excellent job presenting it, and I thank you for that. There are certain things that you have to follow that have been brought out by law. One thing that I would want to mention is if you have, well, I'm going to skip that. So the bottom line is, I'm going to qualify it as a yes because of the laws that have been presented that we have to follow. We almost don't have any choice. If you had asked me when this first came in with the low and moderate income housing, I was pretty outspoken then that they did it wrong. But at that time, there was so much not known that it should have been 20% of all building. We should not have been given a number. But the bottom line was, we were given a number, and we do have to follow that. So the answer is yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Ms. Cosco?
I just wanted to add that I want to thank the Walters Group for making the modifications and adjustments to the plan based on the community's input. We had a very valuable public information session back in 2021, an ongoing dialogue And I do recall that the original plans had three-story buildings along the front. The plans were changed and modified based on the community's request, and found that the most reasonable change could be to have the three-story furthest back on the southeast side of the property for the three-story buildings, and then have the 2 stories in the front. So I want to thank you guys for making those adjustments for the community. Also wanted to state that, you know, our third round compliance does include other locations in the community, but this is our largest contribution, our largest project that gets us to our, again, state mandated requirement for third round. And some of those other areas that we are providing affordable housing throughout the community include the 16 new units at Davenport, the Randolph Estates Senior Project that's going to be going up at Christian Faith Assembly, also some legacy and some assisted living facilities that are spread throughout the community, in addition to, I believe we had the Habitat for Humanity house as well. So there are other opportunities for affordable housing, market to affordable, as well as extending some controls at the Glen at Masons Creek. So I think this is a great plan. Again, this is a plan that we came to with Fair Share Housing and with Superior Court. So it's been a concerted effort, and I'm happy to give my vote as yes.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Just one second. I
Sure.
have a question. Mr. Kingsbury, what kind of a time burden is this putting you under to get a resolution out as quickly as possible? And how can we help them meet maybe this May deadline that you have? I know we did it.
Resolution,
Yeah,
we'll be ready next month,
at our meeting.
yes.
Okay, well, I think, didn't one time we expedited something and got it quicker or something?
We'll just need a letter. Well, so we,
No? It has to be for that
You
meeting.
have to be, everybody has to vote on
so,
it.
yeah, so we will need a resolution, of course. But what we can give to HMFA while we're waiting for that is a letter from Paula stating what happened tonight and that a resolution will be adopted at the next meeting. That should check that box for us to give to HMFA so that we can get on the next available agenda.
Okay, well, if I didn't ask my question, we wouldn't be where we are right now. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Be this public.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a comment to the Walters Group.
Sure.
As the construction tech in our construction office, myself, our assistant Jennifer, and our inspectors have had an absolutely good time in regards to having this builder build in our town. The reason is again, as everyone knows that I've been here a very long time, I've been through more builders than you can expect. And the fact that they have been, as well as we have, but I have to say that this builder has been more accommodating than most in my career. Anytime that there's a phone call or there's a request from my inspectors, from my fire official and such, is that it is literally on the ball. So I'd just like to thank Walters Group, particularly your site manager, Tom. I'd like to give him kudos on record because he has just been an absolute pleasure to deal with and does everything that is expected of him in regards to the code requirements. So I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Del Duca.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Next order of business, we have, I didn't forget them this time, the minutes, December 6th. Need a motion and a second to accept the minutes.
I make a motion that we accept and file the minutes of December the 6th.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Kelly, you weren't here that day.
Oh, okay.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, you can. I need the ones that you have here. I can leave them on board in case you want me to, if you want me to. I'm sorry.
You got a motion?
Mr. Murphy, and then who second?
Is there a second?
You first, right?
If I did, if you need a motion, I will second.
Second.
Okay.
Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
And Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
Next order of business are some resolutions. We have Resolution 2024-10 for the automobile sales on Route 38. That's 2410. Need a motion and a second. Well, first, yeah, motion and a second.
I don't know what I think.
Pardon?
Second.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
Wasn't I at that meeting?
You voted no.
Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. The next resolution is 24-11, adopting the findings and recommendations of the Hainesport Township Committee, Affordable Housing. Need a motion and a second?
Second?
Okay, any questions on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
And Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes. Next is correspondence. We have 15 items of correspondence. I need a motion and a second that they be accepted and
I make a motion that we accept and file the correspondence.
Second.
Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes.
Mrs. Torti?
Yes.
Mr. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. Tricoci?
Yes.
Mrs. Baggio?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Cosko?
Yes.
And Mr. Kroll-Pfeiffer?
Yes. Next, we're at professional comments. No, wait. Yes, I'm sorry, yeah, professional comments. Any more professional comments?
None.
Thank you all. Board comments.
Yes, I have one comment for Kathy Newcomb. Kathy, I'm in rehab now, and 3D has made a comment to me about how easy and how accommodating you were in helping them open the 3D Hainesport office. That among the 3D community, they have 10 offices. Ours was the fastest and the easiest to open, and they credit you for doing that.
Well, I think as a town, as a whole, that we all, including the board, our professionals, all of our offices, our administrative, is that we have had more comments and probably 21 years. What a great job that we do here from top to bottom, so I think kudos to everyone.
Thank you. Any public comments about anything? Okay, hearing none, close public comments, and it's time to get to adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thanks, sir, appreciate it.
Good night, we are done.
Yeah.
Sure. 38, there's.